Hello and welcome to the Sonic Cinema podcast. My name is Brian Scuttle. Thank you for joining me at www.sonic-cinema.com, as well as the Sonic Cinema podcast YouTube channel. You can also check us out at patreon.com/Sonic Cinema. There you'll get brief write-ups on older movies that I watched for the first time, deeper dives into subjects like Clive Barker, like Jackie Chan, like the Lonesome Dove series. That's all at patreon.com/Sonic Cinema. This episode, I recently rewatched this movie and I really wanted to talk about it. And my guest today leapt at the opportunity, and it's good to have him back on the podcast. The movie we're going to be talking about is John Woo's 1997 film Face Off, and the filmmaker and person I'm going to be talking to today is Jakob Bilinski. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Always a pleasure to be on your show.
This is honestly still one of my very favorite movies. I've been wanting to rewatch it for a while. By the time that I watched it recently, and basically every feeling I had for this movie in 1997 came back immediately. This was a big moment. Like, John Woo was one of my first real dives into foreign cinema, and I think at least certainly probably for a lot of people my generation, he might have been one of the first ones, just because of the notoriety that his earlier films in Hong Kong with Chow Yun-fat had. And then when he came to America, he did Hard Target with Van Damme, which was not really, he had kind of a rough experience with the studio there. Then he did Broken Arrow, which was his first collaboration with John Travolta, and that did pretty decently. It was a decent hit. And then out came Face Off the next year, which was almost his next biggest hit after his next movie, Mission Impossible 2. Unfortunately, his Hollywood career kind of petered out, at least financially, with Wind Talkers and Paycheck. But I'm always excited to talk about John Woo, and because his movies do continue to mean a lot to me, and I really love revisiting them and talking about them. Jacob, what were your first experiences with John Woo as well as Face Off?
Well, I actually am going to second a lot of what you said. Face Off, in particular, holds a very, very special place in my heart. I still maintain it is one of my favorite, and I think objectively one of the best action movies of the 90s. Mm-hmm. Right alongside, it's going to be weird, and we don't need to get into a Michael Bay discussion, but I also have Bad Boys on the Rock up in that list. But Face Off, I am like more than a little bit obsessed with. But going back to before my first experience with that, I was in this period of like when I was young. My favorite thing was action movies. If it didn't have gunfights and car chases and explosions, is this even really a movie to me? Obviously, my taste has evolved a little bit since then, but that was like, that was the sugar rush. That was before I knew what adrenaline was. That was what was coursing through me. Was just like these movies make me excited, and this looks cool. And that was before I even understood what making a film entailed, and before I even realized I wanted to be a filmmaker. I remember I saw Hard Boiled, like edited for TV on ABC when I was a kid, and I was like, oh cool, it's that guy that does the splits and he's running and he's got a mullet. And I remember thinking, and then there's the diabetes guy, on the farm. And I remember thinking, that's fine, but I didn't really pay a whole lot of mind to who made it or anything. But I remember that was what was Hard Target, like 93. So like by like the mid 90s, I was kind of starting to realize, hey, a person makes a film, and this idea of like, the director is author of a film and whatnot. And I was like, when you see something directed by Steven Spielberg, that feels and looks a particular way. And, I was starting to kind of take note. And I remember seeing the trailers for this movie called Broken Arrow. Mm-hmm. And My mom was, bless her, she was very strict when I was growing up, and I was not allowed to see R-rated movies. I had to kind of like sneak over to a friend's house whose parents didn't give a shit so I could watch them. And but I talked her into letting me go see Hard Boiled. She talked to somebody I think that had seen it before, and I was like, she's like, it's rated R. I'm like, so what? I watch shit when you go to bed and you don't know. That's fine. Anyway, so I got her to take me to see Broken Arrow. And I love that movie. Like I think I saw it probably like a couple times in the theater. And you know, when it came out on pay-per-view, had to like, remember back like when you had to actually like pay and it started at 7, there was no such thing as on demand. Like, you know, I was like, I do that and then we record it and then I watch that VHS to death. And then, you know, I eventually, you know, like it was one of those that I would just watch over and over. When friends would come over, I'd be like, you gotta see this movie. So I became kind of obsessed with Broken Arrow. And then the next year, it's like I saw these TV spots from the director of Broken Arrow, and I was like, say what? And that's when I was like really kind of paying attention. And you know, you had this perfect storm of John Woo, who I was just starting to discover, because like, okay, I'll say that John Woo, honestly, if I'm listing, probably I hate ranking, but I would put him in the echelon of like one of my favorite all-time filmmakers. I didn't see The Killer and Hard Boiled until I got to college, and I just started like renting like, you know, his older stuff, and I love those movies, like particularly Hard Boiled. I know a lot of people tend to skew more towards The Killer, and I love The Killer, but Hard Boiled is my jam. I remember thinking, Chow Yun Fat is sliding down a banister with a toothpick, like with 2 guns, and he's running through a hospital with a baby. I'm like, do you get cooler than that? No, it's not possible. So I hadn't been exposed to his Hong Kong cinema yet, but I remember thinking they were like from the director of Broken Arrow, and you know, you had John Travolta just a few years removed, hot on his Pulp Fiction comeback. You know, I think Tarantino, if I remember right, recommended to him, you need to work with John Woo when he auditioned or something, if I remember hearing that right. And then, and I have and always will be, unironically, the most devout Nicolas Cage fan. Anyone can fight me on it. I've had friends that I've gotten into arguments with. They're like, you should. I'm like, good actor. They're like, he's terrible. Good actor. Fight me. I can point to you like scenes, and Face Off has, in my opinion, one of his best performances. I think, but like seeing like this perfect storm, I was like, I have to go see this movie. Went and saw Face Off, and it, like, I know it sounds hyperbolic, but like everybody can remember that is one of the movie going theatrical experiences where I can remember that feeling of, oh, that's what it feels like to be blown through the back wall of the theater. Like I felt like that dude in the old, what was it, the old Maxell like thing where he's sitting in the chair and the sound is just blowing him back. Like that's how I felt emotionally watching this movie. I was like, this is the most amazing action movie I might ever see. I saw that shit several times in the theater. I remember like, you know, renting it when it came out. I bought it on VHS. I subsequently bought it on Blu-ray, and I just like, please remaster this and put it on 4K. Like that's one of those I'm just going to keep double, triple, quadruple, like dipping over my lifetime. Definitely. It's an all-timer for me. I just remember thinking and rewatching it. Like I watched it for the first time in a couple of years. It's been a couple of years since I watched. Actually, that's not true. I have this thing where on my birthday, I like to kind of throw Nicolas Cage movies on in the background quietly while we like play card games or do other stuff. And so like I had Face Off playing, I think like last year, but it wasn't like watched. It was just in the background. People were like, what is this movie? I'm like, it's Glory. I'll show you sometime. So my girlfriend Emily had never actually seen it. I'm like, you're watching this movie. I have to like vampirically live off of your experience of watching this for the first time because I can't get that again. And which is like the coolest thing, to watch somebody that you care about like watch a movie for the first time, because you never get that first viewing back. But I still remember the way I felt. And like you said, it did kind of all come back to me watching this again. I was like, this movie still holds up amazingly. I think not only is it a great action movie, it's a great sci-fi thriller. I think it's a great character drama. There's like hefty, and I know we're going to get into it, I'm sure, like hefty moments of like emotional gravity and these beautiful character moments that I was not prepared for. Honest to God, this movie does kind of make me cry by the end of it. I'm so invested in the characters, but it's just elevated through this over the top action. Like okay, point being, I love John Woo. I love this movie. I agree that You know, I actually am one of the few staunch defenders of Mission Impossible 2. I think it gets hate that it doesn't really deserve.
Mm-hmm.
I like it a lot. Windtalkers and Paycheck, yeah, no. But I think the last great Woo effort I saw was Red Cliff. I really did enjoy the full uncut version,
Yeah,
international version of that.
yeah.
But I here's the thing. He falls in that category of filmmakers that if he never makes another film, if he only makes shit films from now on, I kind of put him up there, I guess, with a Dario Argento. I'm like, I don't care how bad any recent stuff is. I'm like, you're always going to be one of my favorites because you have more all timers. Filmmakers are lucky to get one, and he has several for me. So I guess that's where I kind of stand with him in the film as an introduction.
Mm-hmm.
No, you're
No,
good.
I'm absolutely with you. And yes, this is a movie that from the first time I saw it, I mean, even at the end, I do get I do get misty eyed. I do cry at the end of this movie, and it's the sappiest damn ending imaginable. Like it's such
Oh
a
God,
Hollywood
yes.
ending. It's so ridiculous, but this that is what makes John Woo such a special filmmaker. Is that he's
Yeah.
able to sell something that honestly kind of sentimental. He's very much like Spielberg in his ability
Hmm.
to sell the sentimental without by taking it just up to the point where it's modeling, but not, but you still feel the emotion there. And
Right.
uh, no, this movie is. See, I'd seen, I believe the first one I had seen of his was Broken Arrow. I really enjoyed that, and then from the time between Broken Arrow and Face Off is when I started to catch up with Hard Target, The Killer, Hard Boiled, Better Tomorrow, and so by the time Face Off came up, and we were talking before we started about that just fantastic teaser for the movie that starts off with John
Hmm.
Travolta's character. He's talking about Nicolas Cage's character. The camera is just doing a 360 around him, or 180. Yeah, 360 around
No,
him.
yeah, all the way
And the
around,
next
yeah.
thing, you see Nick at the right moment. You see Nicolas Cage's face, and it's
That, yeah.
and then you see the clips of the movie that they do to tease the movie any more. And as soon as I saw them, like I have to absolutely see this
Hmm.
movie.
Well, remember back when like that was kind of in a rare time. Where don't get me wrong, I love the concept of the film trailer as its own kind of storytelling medium. Like I remember, and you look how like it's evolved from like the '90s to the aughts and like now. I really like the way modern trailers are cut, but back in the '90s, I mean, you kind of had this like moments all throughout each time period. But I remember in the '90s particularly there being like these really creative teasers like before the trailer would come out, and it would be
Yeah,
like, you know, because that's not in the movie, that 360 shot. But I remember thinking that is so clever. It felt like they made this like conceptual one shot short film just to promote the movie. And at that
yeah.
point I was like, if you never showed me a clip from the movie, I'm like, I'm buying a ticket, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, but yeah, I remember that. I remember seeing that in the theater, and that just kind of gripped me. And like I said, all the TV spots like from the director of Broken Arrow and all that. And I was like, yeah, I was so like it just felt special. It felt like an
Mm-hmm.
event film, like this big summer blockbuster with all these like talents crossing the streams to come up with something that you knew was going to be really special. And I didn't even realize how well that worked for me then. What you're talking about, like Wu's sentimentality, but
Yeah,
he is like that ending. You're right, is so saccharine with the. I mean, I want. I'm sure we'll get to the ending, but like you have like all this, you know, fog and like, you know, atmosphere and mist like right outside the door. You're like, why would that be there? And everything is in the slowest of motion the entire movie. And it's I love that Wu is focused on like reactions, like whether they're
yeah.
visceral or emotional. He's not really interested in reality. He's interested in creating reality out of fantasy, which is, you
Mm-hmm.
know, movie filmmaking. You're it's like a 2 hour illusion. It's a giant magic show. but like I think Wu in particular is very good at making at like creating this stylistic dance on screen where like violence is almost like a ballet and operatic and so over the top, and you're like everybody's diving through the air with two guns having perfect aim. It's like you wouldn't aim like that at all, you wouldn't hit shit. And then doves flying and sparks in slow motion, and it's all about the presentation. It's very theatrical, like stage theatrical. I mean, like everything feels so dialed up to 11, but you have this response to it, and like where eventually like you can't not buy into the illusion and be infected by how euphoric and exciting it feels like. And if you don't respond that way, I don't know how to have a conversation with you, because I'm like, it's like if you don't get that, I'm like, I can't explain it to you. Like a lot of people when they talk about this movie, they're like, that wouldn't work, they couldn't swap faces, the science. And I'm like, pay attention to how realistic anything else is in the movie. You want to harp on the science? Wu is not interested in reality, and that's what I love about it. It's like genuine like ecstatic escapism, and I think it's a flat out work of art. Like he's putting paint on the screen, and it's creating like something really memorable. And yeah, I don't know, I could gush over him all day, but yeah, you get my point.
Oh yeah, I mean the thing that is so great about this movie is that it goes so much over the top in term, like there's pretty much nothing believable in this movie except the character interactions, except the emotional aspect of the movie. That's why it works. And
right.
I remember reading that the screenplay for the movie was originally much more of a futuristic science fiction epic, and they still wanted Wu, but he didn't really bite on directing it because he couldn't really, he wasn't really vibing with the futuristic aspect of it. So
yeah, I remember. I think there was like, yeah, I saw this interview with him on, I think it was on the disc, and he was saying something about like, he wasn't ready for a sci-fi movie. And then the first thing I thought was, paycheck, you're still not. But anyway, but it's like he smuggled it got smuggled in, because it really is at the heart. This thing is like a really fucked up character drama, a family story about fathers and sons and revenge. It's just told through the most preposterous science and the most over the top action sequences ever. It's like, but it's not a thin or threadbare story. It's actually pretty complex, and there's a lot of like I said, emotional gravity, and like even the choosing to specifically name Castor and Pollux. Yeah. But they were, I think those are like the twin sons of Zeus or something like that. Yes. in mythology. Yes. So yeah. It's like there's a lot of I think there's a lot of thought going into this. It's not your run of the mill action script of bad guy, like the hero's journey of okay, something bad happens, bad guy good guy has to hunt down bad guy. There's a revenge and get to your lowest point and redemption in the third act. Like it's all there, your basic storytelling techniques, but it's much more like complex, I think.
Oh yeah, no, I would agree with that. And I mean the movie, the great thing about this movie, the reason that I do think it stands so above and beyond the rest of his Hollywood work, which I still really enjoy most of his Hollywood films, but with this feels much more in keeping in terms of thematic aspects, in terms of the type of emotions that's coming out to. I mean, it feels of a piece with The Killer and Hard Boiled, where you have cop and killer on two sides of the same coin. You have romantic aspects of the movie. You have human aspects of the movie that just come in at the most unexpected moments. And on top of that, you have the action sequences that are as expertly put together as anything anybody has ever done. I mean, I do agree with you. This is one of the best, if not the best, action film of the 90s. I mean,
yeah, I was biting my tongue on saying it's the best of the 90s because I want to say that, but I'm like, I need to really analyze that and not be so reactionary, but it's hard for me not to want to be like, yeah, Face Off, totally. It's just so good. I definitely want to. I'm sure you have your whole list. I was making notes like crazy when I watched this thing. I'm sure you have your things you want to talk about because I definitely want to go into several of the action sequences. But can we just for 1 second talk about this cast lineup, like how
This cast
amazing
is incredible.
everybody is? Yeah, I mean, and not just like Travolta and Cage, who, honest to God, are like at the top of their game here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was amazed at how well they can go back and forth between, just over the top, like you're having fun scenery chewing mode, or Cage going full Cage, to these really restrained character bits, and like the way that these beautiful, like emotional, complexly acted performance scenes, like where you have them having switched from when Travolta becomes Cage and Cage becomes Travolta, or Archer becoming Castor and vice versa. Like I think they did perfect impressions of each other, their mannerisms, watching how they changed, and I remember just thinking, how fucking fun would that be to have to, as an actor, to basically get to play those dual roles, and the way that they have to go back and forth, and then all of a sudden, okay, Archer has to be Troy, and now he has to pretend to be this person, and the turmoil that it causes with him, and then all of a sudden, okay, well, now I have to pretend to be me again, but through this other person, like when he's going back to talk to his wife Eve. It's just layered so intricately, like it kind of blows my mind. Like, and I think that I don't think that the two of them get enough credit for how truly phenomenal their performances are in this movie.
I don't think they do. I really don't.
Like everybody's like, oh, Cage, and don't get me wrong, Nicolas Cage, he's in everything. He has 50 movies come out a year. Yeah. I love him. I love the good, the bad, and the ugly. But everybody wants to be like, oh, Nicolas Cage is a great actor. I'm like, okay, yeah, it'd be really easy to point at, like, okay, Leaving Las Vegas, okay, Adaptation, and I would argue recently, okay, Mandy. But then you have this. Just sit down and watch the scene where he goes to and tries to explain to Eve, like, like, I'm not me, I'm not him, I'm your husband.
Yeah.
And then he talks about the blood type, and then he tells that whole story about taking her out on her first date for surf and turf. I'm like, watch those scenes and tell me he's not acting his ass off, and in a good way.
The
go ahead.
As with Gina Gershon, the first
God, that is so much hard.
Together in the movie, where it's like he almost forgets he almost forgets whose face he's got, and so
and he's like all drug addled at that point. Yeah, okay. I'm not exaggerating. You said that, and I'm thinking about that scene, and I literally had chills pop up on my arms because that moment. Everything of that sequence is so beautiful. Like I really did. I mean, we're jumping ahead. I really wanted to talk about the whole the centerpiece of that whole like sequence at Dietrich's is like one of my favorites.
Yes,
but that moment in particular where they he's like, I'm not me, I'm me, and he's doing his crazy Nick Cage face, and she knocks him out, and then it's like back to reality, and he's like, oh, I like these clothes. Of course. They're yours. Oh, it's a good looking kid too. Of course, he's yours. And then that plot twist. I remember thinking, what the hell? And like all of a sudden you have this gravity, and that's when I was like, this movie's about fathers and sons and in loss, and it's beautiful and terrible and tragic and amazing, and him and Gina Gershon also. Gina Gershon is amazing in this movie.
Yeah.
And I watching this movie, I forgot how big of a crush I had on 90s Gina Gershon. She's just Gina, how you doing? If you listen to this. Anyway, but oh my, she's phenomenal in this movie. But yeah, you have all these. You have the sequence where Nick Cage as Castor Troy, as Sean Archer. As Sean Archer as Castor Troy.
Yes.
It's so crazy in that sequence, and like the way that he's like trying to interact with like his old friends, and then the way he is with his family, and just the way that builds towards the end to the standoff in the church. We'll get to that later, pen in that. But I like Cage's performance. I love how he goes from so completely, utterly batshit. Like you're like, when are those Cage moments? And then he dials in with humanity. Like, okay, like when they're in prison, and he's beating up the Ivan, the Russian guy. Dubov. Thank you. And he's like, I'm Castor Troy, And he's like, woo, and he does like that little like crazy face to Pollux, his brother, and then with that little guitar on that, like, also, I'm being super all over the place with it, but John Powell's score, like, that's part of the emotion for me for this entire movie, because it's like one of the best scores ever. Fight me on that, I don't care.
I do want to give a shout out to John Powell here, because this was his first real big score. Like this.
Oh, are you kidding me? I didn't know that it was his first.
This was his first big project, and he's since gone on to do this. He did the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy, which I absolutely fucking love that music. Yeah. He's done the Bourne movies. He did Solo's Star Wars story. He's just such a talented composer, and like this one is, what's interesting about this one is that it's the score here is produced by Hans Zimmer, and you can tell it's very much that
it's
Hans
Zimmer has these little like proteges or people that he produces. It's like when Spielberg produces a movie, it's like there's fingerprints on there, even though someone else is still doing their own thing.
Yeah, but at the same time, that score, just the main theme that you hear at the beginning of the movie is just it's such
beautiful and haunting.
Yeah. It's so wonderful. And
he
is such a tremendous talent, and I'm always grateful to see his name on a project because of the fact that he's just such he has such a strong voice as a composer that
absolutely,
as a soundtrack nerd, I can't help but love what he does.
Oh no, like I love soundtracks and scores. Like honestly, like I have this little like I'm kind of like a vinyl collecting junkie, and like one of my favorite things to get is like scores of movies that I love. And Face Off is sort of like on the bucket list. I'm like, I want a really good release of that, please. Mondo or somebody put something cool like that out. Like this score is just I can talk about it forever. It's so good. But just like the way that like you have that little like guitar riff whenever Cage looks at his brother and then starts beating the guy up. Like when he's like, I'm Castor Troy, and he's trying to put on that act. And then all of a sudden you see him like he grabs his face because he's in agony. Because like you think about it, this FBI like Travolta's character, like Sean Archer, this is awful for him because it's like he's been hunting this guy that killed his son, and now he's trying to be him. And like just that turmoil of how do I do this? Like I forget if it's Nicolas Cage or John Travolta. It's like they embody those characters so well, from even tiny little mannerisms like Travolta when he's Sean Archer and he's doing all these little things like he's always kind of like has his hand and he's rubbing the back of his neck.
Yeah.
And then like when Nicolas Cage is him when he has anxiety and he's like, oh, I'm not gonna get out of prison, he's doing the same thing. Like they really like took time to like, I feel like they just had to like really have a lot of conversations and analyze each other and like behaviors. Like, oh, you're doing that. Well, can I bring that back in when I'm being you later? Like it's because it's not just like a subtle shift. Like from the moment that Castor Troy wakes up and then all of a sudden now he's John Travolta's like in the face, walks in and just like, wee, you good looking. Yeah. Also, this is like literally one of the most quotable movies ever. But
it really is.
But like just like all of a sudden the mannerism, I'm like, that's not the same. It's like Travolta just like flipped it. It's like they're each all of a sudden are in a different movie, but the same movie because they're just like they flopped. And it's not like I know it's like the best version of Freaky Friday ever. just okay, dude. Now you be this person. I know that there's what came out this weekend where the Freaky, that horror movie remake of it, and I'm like. Yeah. Vince Vaughn, I like you, but you're not going to be as good as Travolta and Cage on the character flip. There's no way. But yeah, no, like I just the character bits and like where it starts from, because I kind of mentioned like this whole thing. Just can we rewind to the beginning in chronology? Can we just talk about that damn opening scene for a second?
Oh my god! So
I was not prepared for that the first time I watched it.
So the beginning of the movie, we have Sean Archer played by John Travolta with his son Michael on a merry-go-round, and
the creepy, which for some reason out of the gate feels creepy. By the way, those horses.
I think it's because of the way that the filter is on the shot, because
it's like this high contrast bleach bypass. Yeah. And
So he's spending time with his son Michael on merry-go-round, and you see Castor Troy, played by Nicolas Cage, getting ready to take a shot. And he takes a shot, and it turns out that he hits Sean Archer, but he kills Michael. And from there, basically the rest of the movie kicks into high gear. We have Sean Archer on a dogged chase to try to apprehend Castor Troy for vengeance, and we'll get to the rest of it. But yeah, we'll focus on this opening sequence. And yeah, John Powell's music, the cinematography, the way that John Woo cuts the movie, the way he shoots, the way he picks the right angles, it's just absolutely perfect. I mean, it's the right way to open this movie.
No, and how beautiful is it in its damn simplicity of just like, okay, we don't know anything about these characters. We see, we see Travolta with the son. We're like, okay, we have a father and son, and then Nicolas Cage with the best worst mustache in film history. Just like looking through a sniper rifle, and then like that music shift where it goes from sort of like dreamy and happy and like almost like a fairy tale to like just dark, and all of a sudden like, is this a horror movie? Right on the title card when it says face off, when he rips the sheet off of the rifle, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, what's going to happen? No dialogue, just, kids laughing and the sound of the score over the air. And it's just, and then, then he shoots, and we have no idea who these people are. Flash cut to, I forget at this point, like how many years later it was, but it's like, we have this snapshot of where they started. And then you come to realize, okay, he's an FBI agent, and he's hunting this terrorist, this sociopath, this mass murderer, like who has wreaked havoc on who knows countless how many other people, but personally killed his son in trying to kill him.
Yeah.
And even the way that Cage's reaction when he does it, he's like, he never meant to kill a kid, like that wasn't the point. And the way that dovetails into, I keep going back and forth, and I'm so sorry for that, but just the way that comes back in that shootout at the end of the church, which is, I still want to talk about that later, but just that line's like, your son was an accident. I meant to kill you, but you had to take it so personally. It's like, why couldn't you just kill yourself or get over it? It's like, also, again, this damn script, I love it so much. But yeah, just that simple opening of, we don't know who these people are. You can identify good guy, bad guy, hero and victim, and adversary, but like you don't like, there's no dialogue, you don't need anything, and you're already feeling everything before the movie even starts. It's like this prologue is like, it's not up to, okay, I'm not comparing, but it's like, if I'm thinking of openers that just like hit me and I'm like, fuck you for making me feel everything, but I'm in what's going to happen the rest of the movie. This is terrible, because I have a ton of opening scenes that I love across the history of film, but it's like the only other one that I can really think where like, I'm like, I felt something right out of the gate, and I'm like, what happens next is Up, which is the weirdest thing to connect to. But if you're like openings that grabbed you and you're like, you're emotional, but you're like, I'm in for whatever this ride is. It's like, those are the first two that come to mind. I know others would if I sat down and really thought about it, but it's like, how can you not be invested in what happens next? And then we go right into a holy shit car chase on a runway with a plane crashing into a hangar. It's like this movie is like, get ready, we're going to start, and we're not going to stop for 2 hours and 15 minutes or whatever. It's
I mean, if John Woo was given, the fact that John Woo was arguably only really given carte blanche on one movie, and this is what he comes out with, it's basically like, I'm going to throw everything and then the kitchen sink into this that I want to do from an action standpoint. And but going back to the storytelling and going back to Wu is an absolute master when it comes to visual exposition. And
absolutely.
And exposition where with a minimal amount of dialogue, and it's not just Face Off. You look at The Killer, you look at the beginning of Hard Boiled, like all of those really get you understand immediately what you're in for from a storytelling aspect. You understand these characters.
I would argue Broken
understand
Arrow too, honestly.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, okay, so where is he going to take him now? And yeah, basically, seeing where they are now compared to where they were, it's like the comparison to Up is strange, but it's honestly very appropriate because of.
I was gonna say, like, I feel like it's a weird thing to throw up, but I was like, I feel like if anyone will understand, it's gonna be you here.
Because of the fact that you have this opening, you see where you basically see life together, and then all of a sudden you see a tragedy happen, and then you see the aftermath of that tragedy, and that is exactly what the beginning of Up does, where it's like you understand the character of Carl Fredricksen just the same way you understand Sean Archer in this movie, and then you'll come to know Castor Troy, and let's go back to the cast though, because
we
talk about the cast, but you have John Travolta and Nicolas Cage at the beginning. You have Joan Allen, who
is amazing in this,
terrific in this as Eve Archer. Gina Gershon as Sasha. Alessandro Nivola as Pollux. Nick Cassidy,
who has long time been one of I think one of the most underrated actors. I fucking love him, and he's still great. I don't know if you're a fan of it or not, but his whole sequences in Refn's Neon Demon are amazing. He is just one of those. I don't know. I don't think he's capable of delivering a bad performance.
Yeah. You have Nick Cassavetes as Dietrich, and I love you can tell that Nick Cassavetes is a director because of the fact that he's so theatrical in his scenes together.
He's John Cassavetes' son, so I mean, what are you gonna do? Yeah, I mean, and I remember I love telling people, I'm like, that motherfucker directed The Notebook. It's what the hell, man? Yeah, no, I love Nick Cassavetes in this is amazing, and those are the big ones, but then you have Dominique Swain and all these little character bits that just pop in and steal their scenes, like Combe Fury, and then John Carroll Lynch, CCH Pounder, Margaret Cho, Thomas Jane, who I always forget is in this movie because he's so disappeared into his character. Tommy Flanagan, another character actor I love. But yeah, it's
and Harv Presnell as well, and it's it was amazing watching this movie and seeing Harv Presnell and John Carroll Lynch, who were both in Fargo together, and seeing them in very Harv Presnell was essentially playing a similar attitude character than they did in Fargo. It's a different character, but it's still same attitude. John Carroll Lynch is completely a 180 from the character he played in Fargo, and then a decade later he plays Arthur Lee Allen in Zodiac, and he takes this a bit further. He
is such an amazing chameleon-like actor. Everything he pops up in, I'm just like, what are you going to do now? He's phenomenal.
And even Dominique Swain as
I always forget he's in Shutter Island too. That's another one that blew me away.
Right, I forgot. And then Swain is Jamie, and this was right around the time I think it was after she filmed Lolita.
They both came out in '97, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that, but because I remember, she had a good year that year, and she's decent in this. I actually really love the Lolita remake, which I feel bad because I'm like I should like the Kubrick, but that one that has an impact. It's really good.
Yeah. I actually, and we didn't have Showtime, so I didn't watch it on Showtime, but I did see it when it came out theatrically a year later, and it really flattened me. I do love Adrian Lyne's version of Lolita. I think it's a tremendous adaptation of that story.
It's a beautiful, complex, and uncomfortable but understandable love story. I remember when I try to explain the movie to people, they're like, that's sick, and I'm like, it's really complex and intricate, and it's just, you watch the movie. It's but she's great in it. So yeah, I know that I think they both came out in '97, but I have no idea which they shoot first, which shot first. So I'll defer to you on that.
I think Lolita did shoot first, but it had a hard time finding its way to release because of all the controversy about it. Because I think it was originally produced by. Well, no, it was independently produced, but like I think it ended up being released by like Samuel Goldwyn because of the fact that like none of the major studios or even some of the bigger indies would touch it. Because
and like Adrian Lyne had like a really like he had a lot of clout to his name, I think, at that point still. Then and Jeremy Irons, it's like, okay, well, you're not gonna not release a Jeremy Irons movie.
Yeah.
And
I think
I remember renting that on video, like when it didn't come to theaters anywhere near me, but like I ended up like, or if it did, I wasn't aware. But I remember renting it and honestly, I saw that one before Kubrick's. I saw Kubrick's later, and like I love both, but I feel bad. I actually prefer Lyne's personally.
I actually do as well, and I adore Kubrick, but yeah, I actually do. I actually prefer Lyne's as well, and I think I'm like you. I saw Adrian Lyne's first, then Kubrick's. But,
which admittedly could have some of that effect if I'd seen him in reverse order. I don't know if I still feel the same way, but say la vie.
No, absolutely.
Anyway, but yeah, okay. So the cast in this, Dominique Swain is. You and I are great at tangents. I love it. But Dominique Swain is she's great as Jamie. I love it. It's kind of funny because it's the same year that Lolita came out. The way that she had this year of playing off of like uncomfortable situations with like older men. Because like I remember like my girlfriend Emily was when we were watching. Like I said, it was our first time seeing it, and it got to that scene later whenever Travolta, who's Castor Troy pretending to be Sean Archer, comes in. And like, she's like on the phone in her bedroom smoking a cigarette. Well, no, she's not smoking a cigarette. She's on the phone, like in her room, in her underwear. And he walks in and he's like, "You have something I crave," and like kind of leans by her. And you're like, and she audibly goes, "Ew." And I'm like, "Hang on." And he just reaches around to grab her cigarettes. And she's like, "Those aren't mine." He's like, "I won't tell Mom if you won't." But it's like, there's this little moment of suggestiveness where you're like, oh, this is awkward and uncomfortable. It's like, okay, it's weird because it's like, she thinks it's her dad. It's not her dad. Either way, it's icky. More icky if it's her dad, but it's not. But it's like this weird, and I love the way that Wu plays that out. You're again, like, this movie is all about like baiting reactions, like whether you're supposed to be like sad or happy or like an adrenaline rush or icked out here. Like he's like a master like at pulling the puppet strings. It's just like exactly how you want to feel. It's like like if you don't succumb to what he's like, every little beat that he's wanting you to feel at any given moment, then you're dead inside, because he manipulates it so perfectly. And how could you and like the fact that he got this cast to help elevate that. Like, I always forget how many amazing actors just pop up just for like a scene or two in this.
Yeah.
It's like,
I was gonna say,
it is a crazy cast.
I was gonna say, we're talking about Dominique Swain. So Carl, her boyfriend in this is Danny Masterson.
Yeah, I made a note about that. Who? It's a little weird now seeing him do a scene where he's being a little rapey, because you're like, oh, but after all the stuff that came out, but yeah, like, it was weird because I was like, oh, I fucking forgot Danny Masterson was in this, because it's like everyone. This movie is stacked with, like, I don't know, like, I can't think. You don't get casts like this in movies. Say you'll get like 4 or 5 good ones, but you won't get that many holy shit character actors in the same movie.
Yeah, this movie is ridiculously cast. Another one that I was going to talk about was one of Castor Troy's henchmen at the beginning and then again at the end is Tommy Flanagan.
Tommy Flanagan, who I love.
Sons of Anarchy.
Sons of Anarchy. Yeah. He's in. Oh, okay. Let's take a brief second and go down the rabbit hole of Sir Tommy Flanagan the First, Esquire. I'm just adding stuff too. He's in everything. Okay, like recently we got Westworld. Who's amazing. I keep forgetting he's in Guardians of the Galaxy, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Gladiator. Yeah, Gladiator. Basically, if you need a badass that has a scar on their face that's going to just, steal the scene and chew the scenery, you cast Tommy Flanagan. The dude's amazing. He's a phenom.
Oh, he's fantastic.
Sin City. I always forget he's in Sin City and Smoking Aces. And shit. Of course, he pops up in everything from name a show. Yeah, he's on Special Victims Unit. He's on 24. He's on Gotham, for crying out loud. He just is gonna show up in anything and kick ass. He is he actually might be one of my favorite all-time character actors. I love that dude.
Right. No, he is so much fun to watch whenever he's in a movie, and it's such a pleasure. I mean, even in this, he's only in a couple of scenes. I don't even know if he really has a live dialogue in this movie, but he's just got such a presence to him that, I mean, ultimately that's what we want from him, and you know what? It's effective. It works.
Here's the thing, and I mean this in the kindest way, because he deserves to have all the lines, but he doesn't need them, because that motherfucker can carry weight just with a look in a scene.
Oh, he's absolutely.
But he's oh man, it's as many times as I've seen this movie, and I realistically couldn't give you a remotely accurate number as to how many times I've probably watched this movie so far in my lifetime, I always forget, they're in that movie too, because it's too many to keep track of.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you were saying, it's so stacked with just the craziest abundance of talent.
It really is,
both in front of and behind the camera.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's funny. So I do want to bring up a couple of names that are behind the camera, especially as producers. So Michael Douglas is one of the executive producers. And it's so rare because of the fact that you kind of forget that Michael Douglas does have this career of producing stuff that's not necessarily his. Because I think he was one of the producers on One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah, him and I forget. It's the guy. It's the person who's credited alongside him, and I'm awful right now for forgetting. But they had I think recently or something. Yeah, they had formed a production company. I think. Kind of in that era, or had it been around a long time before that? I don't remember, but I know that they were producing partners, and their names are on more things than you probably think about.
Yeah, and Barry Osborne is another one of the producers, and he would go on to co-produce the first Matrix movie, and then of course the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and he's just. You just look at this amount of talent. And I mean, you have Oliver Wood as cinematographer.
I was going to say, please mention Wood's cinematography. He is so good. He
went on to do some of the Bourne movies. Christian Wagner went on to edit the first Bourne movie, at least. And
Oliver Wood. I mean, his filmography is kind of all over the place, because he shot a ton of the original Miami Vice episodes, and Die Hard 2, and Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, and then you see Face Off, but it's he also is hey, in between I'm gonna do Sister Act 2 and Mighty Joe Young and
Mr. Holland's Opus. Yeah,
exactly. Scooby-Doo 2. He's kind of all over the place. But here's the thing: is stuff. It always looks good. He did. I don't know if he did the first one. I know he did Equalizer 2, but he's worked with Adam McKay a lot, because he did Talladega Nights, Step Brothers, and Anchorman 2, actually. Well, we won't talk about Anchorman 2, because anyway. But the point is his you see some people are oh, you shoot this kind of thing. He is just universally talented. I mean, he doesn't just shoot one type of thing or style, but if you think oh, okay, when you think about Mr. Holland's Opus, it's a good-looking movie, or Sister Act 2, or Adam McKay's movies or anything. They all tend to really look good, but how fucking cool does Face Off look? Yeah. Seriously, I mean, which I think is probably a combination of him and Wu working together, but from the get-go, while the credits are still rolling, Castor Troy, after which we have to talk about him as a priest and the choir girl at the beginning in a second. But before we pivot to that, because there's so many Cage moments for Castor that I'm just this is everything. But you got that shot where he gets out of the car and the priest robe is undone, and just the way the wind catches it and flicks it up, and then all of a sudden the gold guns, and he pulls out the gold dragon money clip, which is just John Woo like ushering in Hong Kong cool
Yeah.
to the American blockbuster with style. Like how there's like you could take any frame from this movie and it would look like, you know, frame it, put it on a wall. Like every shot is just immaculately composed.
Yeah,
And
there's so
yeah.
many phenomenal shots. I mean, we'll get to them. Yeah, that is easily one of the most iconic though, because of the fact that it's peak John Woo, but it's also peak Nicolas Cage the way he's selling it. And
oh yeah.
It's
and brief tangent, and I apologize for this because I know we're probably making this probably a long episode, but I love that you said like Nicolas Cage in peak form here. There's a beautiful thing that happened across the course. Again, I die hard worship at the altar of Sir Nicolas Cage. This is the second film in what I consider the great Nicolas Cage Prison Break quadrilogy. Because we had The Rock and then Face Off, I think the same year, Con Air later. Yes. And then eventually I rope into it, Drive Angry, because he breaks out of hell. It's kind of like a prison. But like there was this 2-year stretch in 96, 97 where all Nicolas Cage did was break out of prison and be a badass. And I was totally there for it.
Well, when it was basically Nicolas Cage immediately after his Oscar, just basically getting paychecks for action movies, but I always love the debate when it shows up on social media of like which of those three movies is the best, because chances are each person's gonna have a different answer. And honestly, like I prefer Face Off. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. But I also I of course I love The Rock, and I love almost, you know,
if you were in on the joke, if you
Con Air.
Yeah, no, Con Air is fast food, but a quarter pounder tastes fucking good, Brian. It is. Yes. if you are in on the joke of what Con Air is, it is the most fun ride. If you're but if you have to get, you're like, what is this accent? What is this movie? What is this needle drop track? You're like, you're either along for the ride or you're not. But I was totally there for it. Also, that's my birthday movie, and it will always be special to me because the entire movie takes place on my birthday, when he's like, Cyrus is the virus is all like, I'm going to see my daddy on my birthday, July 14th, and he's going home to see his daughter. I'm like, my birthday, July 14th. I was like screaming in the theater. I'm like, yes. So I try to watch that as close to my birthday each year as I can, because it's trash, but I love it. I love it. I'm here for Nicolas Cage's mullet. He's like I worked out a lot, and I'm only gonna wear a tank top the whole movie, and I'm gonna be like the most badass, charming white trash hero you've ever seen. And it's great. I love it.
It's funny because that was the first real movie that Bruckheimer produced without Don Simpson, and it's arguably the most self-aware movie he ever produced. It's like it's
so tongue in cheek.
It's almost like it's a parody of this type of movies, and it's also kind of a parody of like the way action movies operated in like the mid 90s, because a lot of action movies were that's when like action movies were just really getting away from sort of the Die Hard. I mean, they were still tied to the Die Hard idea, but at the same time they were getting way away from the reality of Die Hard.
Oh, actually, absolutely. But
no, Con
Air would work. Con Air is like, I'm sorry, like this is weird. Like Con Air would work just as well if it was like conceptualized and directed by like Trey Parker. Yeah. Like it like the whole thing feels like this great big self-parody, and if you like morph that into a South Park episode, I'd be like, no, this fits. It's I don't know, it's so ridiculous, but like Cage really was in. It's weird because after leaving Las Vegas, he just went into action form. I remember there's this thing on the commentary or something like on The Rock where Michael Bay was talking about like when they were filming that sex scene, like, you know, pretty early on before like he actually goes into Alcatraz. And like Cage was like taking his shirt off. He's like, no, you don't need to take your shirt off. She's wearing a robe. Like, and he's like, no. He's like, oh. And I think Michael Bay said he had some interaction. He's like, oh, you've been working out a lot, and you just kind of want to. Okay, take your shirt off for the scene. So it's like this whole bit, and like, you know, he like before. Could you realistically think of Nicolas Cage as an action star? And it felt weird, but like it works so well in like that little trilogy there of Prison Break movies, and I don't know.
well, yeah. I mean, this one has him breaking out of prison too. So, I mean, but
Mm-hmm.
we'll talk about that. But
Yeah,
so
yeah. Sorry, again, all over the place, but yeah, go
so
ahead.
um, Sean, he captures Castor Troy after the insane, runway action car chase, and it looks like he might have killed Castor Troy, but it turns out he's just in a coma. And that's actually beneficial because of the fact that Castor, as we saw, uh, set a bomb set a bomb to detonate at a convention center in Los Angeles. And they need to find out where it is and when it's supposed to go off.
Mm-hmm.
And the only person, of course, that Pollux will talk to is his brother Castor. So, in one of the most ridiculously insane ideas I think any action movie has ever come up with. I mean, that I don't know, that's a pretty high bar, but
Yeah, but this one is ready to meet it.
you have an underground, you have a doctor to come up who basically can transfer one person's face to another person's body, completely forgetting about blood type, you know, compatibility and all of that fun
Yeah,
stuff, and
physics
they'll
and
figure
yeah.
out the body, the physical attributes and stuff like that, and you'll go undercover as Castor Troy, and uh, that is, and I will. It's funny to see him like it's almost kind of funny to see that moment. I mean, you feel it because of what the scene that comes after with Eve, but the scene where Sean's having this dilemma of like, oh, what should I do? Should I do this? And it's like, oh, I'll do it. And it's like, well, you better. It's gonna get the story moving.
Yeah,
But
if
then
you
you
don't,
have
the movie's done. So.
but then you have this scene with Eve where he's having to tell her, it's like, look, I've got to go on this assignment. It's just one more assignment, then I'll be, on a desk and stuff like that, and I'll be home after that. And the way that Eve reacts is, and the way John Powell scores the scene, it's just really beautiful. And
Yeah.
then, and then we get to the moment where the actual surgery happens, and I absolutely props to makeup designer Kevin Yeager on this.
Oh
He
yeah,
did an
the effects in that sequence
tremendous
are amazing.
job on designing the makeup effects in this movie.
Oh yeah, because I mean, if you see the behind the scenes stuff, like it's it's not them. It's like these prosthetics. So they don't even have full arms. It like only goes down to like the bicep and like the upper torso.
Yeah.
But like they're like pumping to like make them breathe and everything. I mean, at first if you look at it like, and they're really smart by like filming it under like this really harsh light that kind of blows everything out. But if you look, you're like, oh, those are kind of like dummies. But like the faces, once they're like putting them on there and moving around, you get just that right amount of ick factor where like a face is like kind of warped, and you're like, no. And like I love that they were so smart in that sequence by not showing everything, because like like I love horror movies. I've made horror movies. There, like, I admit that I would have that impulse of I want to show the gore underneath the face, but it's like by not seeing it or it's out of focus, it feels a little more horrific and focusing on the reaction. So I thought that was a really smart choice, and it also like saved them from trying to like make it, well, we got to make this look too realistic. So like when you just see like the face moving on top and you get the red seam peeking behind, that worked great. And even more whenever Cage woke up doing the best, like trying to talk without having lips, like when he's like it works. He's like, oh, it's cool. We're going to deal with it. And it's like, he kind of sounds like he sounds like Fire Marshal Bill. I'm going to be honest. Like, let me tell you something. But it's so cool. Like how they just like, you just see like when he's like, brah, fucking Bo, and you just see like those little glimpses. And then like it's a tiny pet peeve, but he's like, what do you want? And you see the reflection of the doctor's glasses.
Yeah.
This is after Castor wakes up. Nicolas Cage, as Castor wakes up. He's like, you take one goddamn guess. And you can see that his eyelids are down, and you can see the lips holding the cigarette, and you're like, oh, that should be teeth and open eyes. But you forgive it because it's a reflection in his glasses. They never give you a full good on look on it. And it's like, it helps you buy and sell the illusion. So I thought that was really smart. I've kind of figured like on Wu's part of like, how to like stage all that. But you're right, the prosthetics and the makeup effects in that sequence just are incredible. I'm not trying to like rerun and detour, but if we're going chronologically, there's two things before what has happened that like I really am a big fan of. The one, like I said, when he's the priest, like in the middle of the credit sequence, and just the way that they're setting up these characters, because you already have like an idea for like Sean's character, like when he's like, I'll take a break when the case breaks, and you get the idea he's been hunting this person for years, this strained family life, and then you have ping pong for a brief second to Castor Troy, Nicolas Cage setting this bomb. Hondel's like, hallelujah comes up, and he walks out, starts headbanging, and then picks up this choir girl's leaflet that she dropped, and then grabs her ass and makes the craziest O face I've ever seen, which is my favorite Nicolas Cage gif of all time. It's just the look on his face, and you're like, I know exactly who this character is. And then fast forward a little bit later to what you were talking about, the scene where he's talking to Eve about, I have to go do this one last vital thing, and she has this like, we're talking about like the big human moments. That's one of the biggest ones early on in the movie, because like who has been in a relationship that can't relate, probably, I'm generalizing a little bit, but like who can't relate to the fact that like your work, or whether it's a passion project or your actual job, what you're working on, takes you away from those that you love. And you get the idea like this is a strained relationship, not just because they lost their son, but because in a weird way Eve kind of lost her husband because he's been obsessed with trying to catch him since, when maybe, we don't know, maybe all she wanted was him home. And like he's been gone and like running, and he's like, one last time, even though he's got him, I have to go back one last time. How many times have they had that conversation? It's just one more time, and you feel that in her performance, where he's like the way Travolta just says that when she's like, you have to go back, and he's like, just this last time, just once, and she's like, you've never needed my permission, so if you're gonna go, just go, but go now. And I'm like, I like that shit hits hard. I think that the idea of like trying to struggle with like balancing time with those you love, and like what father could walk away from that, like that is, it's such a beautiful, tender moment. So like you have these weird polar opposite scenes where you totally know who these characters are and you understand them on their journey, which is crucial before they do the switch, because like you have the juxtaposition of the hard emotion with Sean Archer, and with Castor Troy you have the bits like grabbing the choir girl's ass, or like on the plane where he's like, if I were to send you roses, no, wait, if I were to let you suck my tongue, would you be grateful? Which I'm like, who wrote that scene and how did they do, like, it's so, and talking about how he's like, I could eat a peach for hours, which ends up being the scene. I love that that's the line that they do to like kind of map his voice. It's like you these characters so like concretely before they're thrown into the deep end of having to switch, and it's beautiful storytelling and character development, and I love it. Like last little tiny tangent to catch up with you, there's this moment that I kind of love, which is just, and I don't care, because Woo's like, hey, we're gonna make this as ridiculous as possible. Castor jumping out of the plane in the hangar with the dual guns, the gold guns, the coolest guns in the history of motion picture cinema. Seriously. And he's diving out and like just firing with that, like, that iridescent like red suit, just looking like a boss. And he's just shooting everybody, sparks out of focus flying everywhere. And then there's that one part where like the shotgun blast, I think it's Castor. He turns and he shoots this guy, and as you see this one FBI agent or whatever running up, you can see like the wires on him. And I remember catching that later thinking, holy shit, because I saw this in the theater, and then I taped it off HBO or whatever, and then I bought the VHS. I since bought like the DVD, and then I bought the Blu-ray. When I was watching the Blu-ray last night, I was like, hang on, as that agent's running up, you can see the strings that are holding him for the stunt that's about to happen. And then the blast happens, and you just see him get pulled away. And it's like, they didn't even bother to like paint that out. But it's so funny how like I've noticed on all my copies I've gotten of that movie over time, how that defect just keeps getting clearer, and I don't care. I'm like, I can see the strings more. Now I can see the strings crystal clear, but fuck it.
Going back to what you were saying as far as the surgery, that I think that's one of the things that's so terrific about this film, is that it really has like pretty much every genre covered. Like there's a little bit of everything. You've got the science fiction aspect, it's a crime movie, it's a drama, it's an action movie, it's a dark comedy, and it's a thriller. And it just covers all of those bases, and the fact that it's got all of these different aspects of it over 2.5 hours is just fantastic.
Yeah.
And but yes, ultimately is an action movie, and that's one of the things that you're going to you're going to take away from this movie more often than not. And you have the scenes in the prison, which is, in the middle of the ocean, and one wonders exactly how John Archer gets back to shore.
He swims like a son of a bitch.
Yeah, I mean, clearly.
But yeah, sure, why not?
But no, it's one of the things that's really just hilarious about that scene is the fact that you basically have like these boots these magnetized boots that people are wearing and stuff like that. And that's how you keep them in line, and it's just such a science fiction prison premise that
it's like they're trying to like work in like this little future. It's like if you look at the outside, it feels like, it's sort of like discount like Kmart watered down prison, but like on the inside it's like this elevated future prison. And it's like ancient but future Alcatraz or something. Like I don't know. It's just weird. But yeah, like you're just kind of like, okay, well this fits with the movie. They're changing faces. Why not? Yeah. This is like the Geneva Convention does not exist here. Amnesty International doesn't even know about us. And you're like, okay, sure, I buy it. Like at this point, it's like I'm drinking the Kool-Aid because like, and part of that is the script, and part of that is just the way that Wu sets everything up. Because like you said, this is an action movie, and you can't not succumb to suspending your disbelief for this film because you have like the way that John Woo handles gunplay is borderline pornographic, and I'm totally here for it. Where like every fight's like a dance, It feels like this ballet, and it's like this overly dramatic orchestrated flourish of like, even at the opening, like going back to like before when they're in the airplane hangar, and he's like, you only have one bullet left. So do you. And he goes, wow. And then they take that little moment to like crisscross their arms so they're not intertwined. Yeah. And it's like, who would do that? But it looks so cool. And you're like, yes. No. And you have all these little. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
And John Woo is somebody who absolutely loved Hollywood musicals, and he has said,
and it shows.
He looks at action sequences as dance sequences. And
absolutely,
you can tell by the way he uses slow motion, by the way he choreographs everything, by the way he uses music. And when we get to it, that exact moment that I think you're thinking about is exactly the moment I'm thinking about too. And it's just absolutely, it's such a powerful use. It's one of the best uses of a song.
Are you talking about the scene that I definitely want to talk about at Dietrich's? Because that's my favorite. That's one of my favorite. Yes. That's actually okay. Let's put a pin in that and get to that, because I legitimately, and I hate to say it, that might be my favorite shootout of all time, specifically because of how it's orchestrated. It's too perfect. But yeah, no, like you can see that he's like working this out like a dance, and I was amazed because like when you watch like the behind the scenes stuff, the actors were actually thrown off by like how Wu does. He doesn't like to do a lot of takes. He likes to do things. He likes to rehearse and then do things in one take. And he's like, maybe I'll go up to 3. And I think there was this moment where Travolta pulled him aside and he's like, the studio's paying me a lot of money. I don't mind to do it like 30, 40, 50 times if we have to get it right. Like, I've done that before. And Wu's like, I just need the good one. I don't care how much they're paying you. It's like, and it's just like, but because you can tell that this wasn't, okay, set up a camera and, like here, and here, and we'll get it and we'll figure it out in the edit, which a lot of people attack that. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes if you're doing a crazy stunt, you're like, the best thing is to get coverage because you don't want to have to do that again if you don't have to. But Wu, it's like they rehearsed that so specifically to a T. And you think about the process of making this damn movie, not just because of the runtime, not just how many action scenes, and we eventually will get to it, but talking about how the finale ends up becoming an action scene on top of an action scene on top of an action scene. Yeah. Fuck it, we have boats now. Like, which is still like that might be my favorite action finale of all time. I love this movie so much. Anyway, like, but you have all this. It's so it's like so carefully choreographed, but you still feel like it's a little unhinged, and there's freedom for the actors to play, because like you don't ever feel like, oh, you watch some action movies and they're so technical, you're like, oh, well, they have to hit this mark because they have to hit focus because blah, 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 blah. Like this feels like they gave them room to play, but he still, like, how many setups were in that sequence? How long did that take? How did he did that with a lot of those with one take? Fucking how? Because he's that good at what he does. Wu is just he's a master craftsman.
And I think I remember that sequence in particular was like a 7-minute shootout that I think I remember hearing. I think I remember hearing or reading that it took like 3 weeks to shoot.
Are you talking about the finale?
No, I'm talking about the scene in Dietrich. I think it ended up taking like 3 weeks to shoot. I mean,
that does not surprise me.
That reason, and it's so complex, and but it's also so precise, because from the second that action sequence starts, it doesn't let up, and it is just absolutely electric.
Yeah, you're totally right. Are we there now? Can we start talking about that scene? Are we still hinting at it?
Yeah, I mean, we can go ahead and go there if unless you have anything else you want to add before we get there.
The only other thing like I really kind of like appreciate about the setup is like how he continues to kind of further the juxtaposition of Archer and Troy. Specifically about like, Archer being like, he's really going through like this. If you think about like what this dude has been through, it's kind of amazing that he's still breathing and alive.
Yeah.
Like, he's and I don't just mean physically, I'm talking like mentally and emotionally. This is, and now at this point, he's trapped in the body of this person who he loathes, that took everything from him. And it's like you have become that which you have hunted. And there's something kind of like uncomfortably like evilly poetic about that, I think. And then you have Troy, who's living it up in his body with his family, with his wife, and again, you have this character of Castor Troy who is just like straight unbridled id almost, where like everything he does is excessive, sociopathic, and sexual. Like again, from the face when, like again going back to the face when he grabs the choir girl's ass, to when he kills was it Winters or whatever, the girl like in the plane, and he kind of like when every time he kills somebody, it's almost he almost looks like he's having an orgasm, and he's so over the top. And then that's going home to our hero's wife and daughter, and it's just like everybody's in danger, and it's just such a unique clash of personalities, I think. I mean, it's not like this is the only time that it's done, but it works so well in this construct.
And it's interesting because of the fact that we're learning, in addition to us learning more about the characters that Travolta and Cage are playing at the moment, those characters are also learning about the people whose face they embody. And
exactly. And those little moments of of skepticism where they're like, wait, what do you say? And then they have to kind of course correct.
Yeah, it's storytelling about storytelling and about storytelling. One of the flat out funniest moments in this entire sequence, in this entire movie, is the first time we see Castor Troy, Sean Archer, go home, and
he misses the house.
And he misses the house.
Yeah.
And you see him slam the brakes, and he's like, he looks, and then he moves back.
Yep.
It's like that is one of the flat out funniest moments in the movie.
Yeah. And the way he plays it off like to her, just like, okay. It's so that is, because like, okay, that's something we should like, we've kind of commented on, but just to call it out specifically, this movie is so genuinely funny. Like it's balanced with like this like really dark, like visceral drama, these pulse pounding action sequences, this like this like bleeding heart of loss and compromise and really conflicting emotions, but there's these moments of levity where it's just laugh out loud fucking funny, and sometimes it's the dialogue, but it's also just these little character bits, and it's specifically how Troy and Archer play off each other in reversal. It's I don't know, it's I'm falling in love with this movie more as we talk about it, and it feels like I'm like I just watched it and like I already want to watch it again. But but yeah, no, you're totally right. And then you get to was it, speaking of cameos, because I was thinking, but we were going past the prison. Wasn't that Joe Bob Briggs for like a hot second in there?
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
It's just like again, I'm like, oh, you're in this movie too. Where was the part? Okay, so yeah, like now we get to Dietrich's scene, which is like this. It's not even the biggest. It's by no means the biggest action scene in the movie. I would actually argue that the airplane hangar, actually that's a pretty good like start the movie off, and then the finale is the creme de la creme. But like this is like the centerpiece of the movie. You know, like we haven't gotten to Act 3 yet, and this feels like the big moment. And if you break down what's really happening in this movie, it's super fucked up because you have Castor Troy as Sean Archer. It's literally like, I'm gonna kill all my friends now just to get to him. And if you think about that, you're like, how? Okay, like, you know, which is an easy thing to glaze over. But if you really think about it, like, this dude is the biggest monster. You know, not just because he accidentally killed our hero's son in the opening scene, but like that's pretty messed up. And then you have this sequence of like, you know, him trying to, him being Sean Archer now as Castor Troy, Nicolas Cage playing John Travolta, sitting here, but as Nicolas, pretending to be Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
He like where he takes the drugs that Dietrich gives him, and then just starts to kind of trip out, and then they talk about how he's like, how are you gonna kill Super Cop? And he's like, tiny surgery. and then the whole like theatrical like, I want to take his face off. And that whole back and forth with Cage and Cassavetes is fucking everything. Like I love that bit. He's like the eyes, the nose, it's coming off. No more drugs for that man. Like and then you think about that. Just stop and think about it for a second. This character, it's a funny moment, but like think about this as a human being. You have a person who has lost everything, who is now trapped in their enemy's body, hanging out with their enemy's friends, trying to get their life back, riddled off of drugs that they're not used to, out of their mind, goes in the bathroom and looks in the mirror and sees this face. Like just his reaction there, where he's stripped out, he's like, I'm not me, I'm me. And the way that, like with the sound design, like, you know, where it's like changing between Cage and Travolta's voices, like I like that. It's a funny and trippy scene, but it's also kind of like emotionally wrenching. You're like, God, this is awful to watch our hero go through this. And then you have the big twist of, oh, he has a son that looks just like my dead son. Basically. It's like, can we elevate the stakes any further here? And then after all this careful setup and character moment and these character moments, boom, operatic action scene unlike anything I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. And it just, the way it moves between the editing in this particular scene is just, it's on another level of
it is
action sequence. It's the way
I don't know how it
builds and ebbs and flows, and the way that you still get character moments, and the way that you still get narrative moments that are going to set up the third act. And I mean, granted, that's at the tail end of the sequence in particular, but at the same time, you have this scene, and you see the type of mother that Sasha is to her son, and she's
and
like,
how can you not feel for her?
I don't want you seeing that. I don't want you seeing that. I don't want you, you know.
He picks up his golden gun and thinks it's a toy. Yeah.
But also her putting the headphones on to shield them from all the noise, and putting on the music, and
it's this beautiful Mama Bear moment.
Yeah, and the music in that sequence is Olivia Newton-John's version of "Over the Rainbow," and it might be my favorite use of that song in a movie.
That is I have a soft spot, and if you ever want to do a podcast about it, I know I've been on your show a few times. Feel free to bring me back, because I love sequences that are set to not really ironic, but like unconventional needle drops. Like, you know, like I'm putting this up there with Reservoir Dogs, Stuck in the Middle with You, where it's like where you just have like a song that you're like, take something that doesn't fit with the scene and you make it work better because they're so like diametrically opposed. Yeah. It's like the fact that we all of a sudden go into this muted like perspective of this child watching this horrific violence all around, in slow motion, like this hyper violent ballet of death and chaos, just set to this super calming, like Olivia Newton-John's Over the Rainbow. Like it's so beautiful and awkward, and like really is kind of like almost you want to see how John Woo turns violence into a dance. Watch that scene, because it's almost it's weird, because you could arguably say like it's so on the nose, but I don't really think it is. I think it's just very fucking clever. Like because he's so in control of his sensibilities there. It pisses me off. I'm like, you can't be that good. How are you this good at what you do? Please always do this. And he manages to hit like he'll go like, because that sequence is beautiful and like chill inducing. And it's bookended by the rest of the sequence, which is so, because it's like a reprieve from all this like chaotic, like really pulse pounding action where everything kind of slows down for a minute just for that song, with these little bits of comedy. Because I don't remember if it's before or after, but you have like these little comedic beats where he's like, hang on, we're gonna get it's like pulling the strings. Audience laugh here, where like you get over Dietrich, he's like, man, my place is getting fucked up. Which I'm sorry, I laugh at every time. Every time I see this movie, I like audibly crack up. Like it's so. 3 weeks is too short to shoot that movie, because you can't tell me that sequence, because you can't tell me they weren't having fun every damn day.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about just the fact that it's like he's rehearsing, but it's like, no, we'll get the best take, and the fact that you do, and the fact that you can figure out, okay, here's where I want to use slow motion. Here's where I want to use slow motion. This is where the editing process, there's a master class of editing going on in this sequence, because of the fact that you have to, it's one of those things where you're a director, you have to understand, here's how I want to put it together. Here's how I want to put this scene together. And the fact that he can have this, it's almost a tangent of, oh, we're going to see it from Ben's point of view, and it's going to be Over the Rainbow playing, and then we're going to take you out of it immediately, and as we're going to build to an even bigger climax between these characters, where they see each other for the first time since the prison, and we also are going to see significant loved ones in Dietrich and Pollux get killed. And that is going to set up everything that we see moving forward. And
that basically kicks us into Act 3, if I think I'm kind of analyzing this like from where the cutoff point would be. Right? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, because the next thing we see is Castor in Travolta's office, and he gets chewed out. He kills Lazar, the head of the FBI, and we come to the moment where Sean as Castor comes to see Eve for the first time.
Okay, and, good point. But hey, sorry, 1 second before we go to that, because I really want to talk about that. There's one thing I wouldn't mind having a short discussion about, which is towards the end of all the stuff with Dietrich's death, which I'm sorry, carries so much weight to me. I love the weight of Pollux's death, what it does for Castor as Sean Archer, and just how he shoots the one other actor, which I think was that dude that was in American Psycho. I forget that actor's name, but he's great. But where he's like, why are you upset? It's just Pollux Troy. Boom, shoots him in the head. But Dietrich's death, which again is fucked up, because Castor's killing his friend, and then and just like his goodbye to his sister. A little weird that they kiss on the mouth, but whatever. And then just I love that turn where he's like, hey man, we had some good times, and then like he's got that hole in his neck that just starts gushing, and then the thing that we have to talk about there, because like you have so many, like you said, so many emotions that have happened in this sequence. You got the emotional resonance of Sasha's kid that we find out is Castor's kid, and all that happening kind of is sorry, actually no, I think we're still in Act 2. I'm being overly analytical here, but anyway, like when you get to like this cap off of that whole centerpiece sequence of the mirror face off. Like the standoff, we got to talk about that for just a second, because I remember thinking, this is fucking brilliant the first time I saw that, and it still is every time. I was just like, it's so simple, but so perfect that they end up like, you know, they're shooting each other, and then he takes a second, and you know, he see like Castor, Nicolas Cage, who's an archer at this point, sees himself in the mirror as he's shooting at Castor as John Travolta, and all of a sudden they turn and they're back to back against a mirror.
Yeah.
And you have that little bit. He's like, I think we liked it better the other way. Can we trade? You can't give back what you've taken from me. Plan B, let's just kill each other. And then they have that moment where they have to shoot. It's like, I was like, okay, I know it's so on the nose, but it's like, you're literally like, it's like they're killing themselves, facing themselves in the mirror, which is a really cool moment, bookended, or like to draw another point to whenever Cage earlier in the sequence like was drugged out of his mind and saw his reflection. It's almost like, you know, coming to terms and acceptance, and like it's sort of like, if I die, I die. I think that little like brief standoff there is amazing. Like I'm trying to think of another moment like that in an action movie, and it works so damn well. Like I was like, this is the most creative use of mirrors I've seen in a while.
Yeah, and I mean that is absolutely perfect because of the fact that you see, yeah, I mean it's exactly what you said. You see Sean Archer looking at Castor Troy, but seeing the face that he's in, and then you see Castor Troy seeing Sean Archer, but in the face he's in, and it's like it is such a simple thing, but it's also perfect. But yeah,
it's like having to kill yourself to kill your enemy, kind of, or whatever. There's levels working there in that scene.
But yeah, one thing we haven't talked about when it comes to the performances by Travolta and Cage, that is one of the things that's so interesting and so precise about these characters and the way they build on they take on the mannerisms of the characters that the face they're inhabiting, is Castor tying his brother's shoelaces. You see it at the beginning, and then you see it at
when he's dead.
When he's dead, and
it's such a beautiful, tiny little moment that would have fallen by the wayside in most action movies, honestly.
Yeah,
like it's such a tiny detail that carries so much weight.
And it's simple because of the fact that it shows that even as much of a sociopath as Castor Troy is, he has a little bit of. He does share some humanity with his brother. He genuinely loves Pollux.
Oh, absolutely. That's his heart, and that's his opening scene that we saw from Archer's perspective. That is him. Like, Archer lost a son. This is his moment. This would be his opening scene if the story were purely his.
Yeah.
And like that comes back literally later in the church standoff. I know I keep telegraphing to that when he's like, you know, he's like. No, he's like, why didn't you get over it? No father could. No brother could either. It's like that. Okay, at that point, they're kind of even, at least in Castor's eyes. You know, it's like that is the moment of like, okay, this is more than just you've been hunting me and I'm trying to kill you first. This is like that. It becomes uniquely personal.
We're gonna talk about the church scene because that scene is it's basically like the killer amped up to 11.
It's the killer. It's the killer redux. He's like, okay, I'm in America and I've got this budget and we're gonna go all out. Like, and okay, sorry, because I know the reason I paused you is because I super want to talk about, and I'm sorry, I know we're just kind of gabbing forever, but like, how can you not talk about this movie this much? But like, I really want to talk about when he goes to see Eve and that 1-2 punch of the scene at their house and the scene at the hospital. But pause on that for a brief second, because you mentioned the editing, and I think that this is. Like you said, if you get like, you know, full studio support and a blank check, if you're gonna swing for the fences, this is the damn one. And I really can't think of another time that's happened, because he was plagued, as you're right. I don't know what the behind the scenes and diplomatic process was or whatever with Broken Arrow, but I know when he did Hard Target, there was a lot of because there's the long rumored original director's cut that never saw the light of day of what that movie was before the studio and MPA like had him cut it down over and over. So like we don't know what the original version was. And then
also had clashes with Van Damme on that one too. And
that's true.
So it wasn't just with the studio; it was also with Van Damme.
You're right, because he was like the biggest superstar at that point for action movies. But then you have and kind of bookended, like you get Broken Arrow and then Face Off, and then right after that, and I still defend it, you had Mission Impossible 2, which you had the cloud of Cruise as a producer that kind of like was like kind of steering the ship of like, yeah, we have a different director on each movie in this franchise, but it's going to be like uniquely this way, and like kind of like what Cruise wants. I love the Mission Impossible series. I'm not shitting on it. I'm here for all of them except 3. I'm like, I'm not the biggest fan of 3, but I love them all to different degrees. But you have but I remember, like, there's this bucket list I have, like, you hear about, like, long rumored original cuts of films that never saw light of day. I so want to see Woo's original cut of Mission Impossible 2, because supposedly it was like this 3 to 4 hour Ben-Hur like epic, hard R rated action movie. Wow. Like apparently the original one, it was like they were like, it's, and you can see little moments of it, like not to pivot for a second, but like I and again, you know, I don't know, but I'm just reading hearsay and accounts, so some of it could be urban legend. I don't know, but like, you know, like you see these little moments, like at the opening, whenever Cruise like breaks the dude's neck in the plane. You notice how there's no neck crack. There's all these little moments because the movie was so violent. They had to they like remove sound effects to try to like not get an R rating. Yeah, and like you can see it in all the gunfights are like. The movie's actually edited a little weirdly, where you feel like it cuts away too quick, because they actually brought on, I forget who, but they brought on an editor after the fact to recut it, and he creatively found ways to like cut away where you focus on the gunshot but you don't see the body and everything. And like they basically like he made it PG-13, but originally Woo's version he delivered was long, epic, much more story based than action, and apparently it was like, I heard it felt like a classic Hollywood epic. And like it got more into like, you know, mythology, and, you know, like the virus was like, you know, the viral thriller pandemic, or the threat of that was much bigger, and it got streamlined. But apparently it was originally like a 3 to 4 hour hard R cut. Wow. And they were like, no. And supposedly like the rumors of people saw it, they're like, it's incredible, you'll never see it. And I was like, I want to see that. So he had studio interference like crazy with Paramount there. Well, and Cruise carrying clout with that. But it's like, I really feel like Face Off is the one where he, like, and it could be wrong. You know, I don't know. I wasn't there, and there could be something out of the studio really mandated a whole bunch of stuff. But I really feel like this is the one where he's like, he got to do what he wants, because you get all these little moments, like you said, like tying the shoelace and all these little things that I think they would have been like, can you cut this down to an hour and 45 minutes so we can have an extra runtime per day? You know, because this was. I remember thinking this is long for an action movie back then. For an action movie. I mean, but it never dragged. It never.
Are 2.5 hours now.
Oh God, yeah. Now, if I go see an action movie and it's under 2.5 hours, I kind of feel like I don't get my money's worth. It's like I'm in the weird class. A lot of people have. I get very excited. You can tell when I talk about things, I can't shut up. So like I you could argue I have a short attention span, but not really with movies. I'm a very patient viewer, and I like if I'm in it, I'm in it. I mean, it's the binge watch mentality. I mean, like if I like a series, I'll sit and watch all 10 episodes on a Saturday if I have nothing to do. It's fine. So like I don't mind as long as it's good. But I feel like this easily could have been, you don't need that, you don't need that, you don't need that. I think you do need everything that's in this movie, and I feel like this is Woo's biggest victory, at least in like American Hollywood cinema, because from an editing perspective, it's done so well. But I don't really feel like. I feel like if the studio kind of was like, no. It a lot of the heart would have been lost. Yeah. You know, and it would have just been like, no, get to the blow up stuff. And the thing is, there's something blowing up every 5 damn minutes in this movie. It's nonstop. This movie is an assault on your senses. It just makes you feel things along the way. It's like you come for the kills, stay for the feels. And it's I
mean, if you think about, I mean, that's where having producers like Michael Douglas and Barry Osborne on this movie, I think that's
to have his back.
They were able to. They gave Woo the clout to essentially do what he wanted, and to be able to say, "Hey, you know what? You want to do this? That's fine. Go ahead and do this." And I mean, look at Barry Osborne. Like one of his other most significant features is a 3-hour 11-hour version of Lord of the Rings, and it's like, I mean,
Yeah, and that's again a new line, like, you know, Peter Jackson, like, you know, he had Peter Jackson's back to be like, no, we're going to do this, and I'll also do extended versions later. You're welcome. But anyway, but I mean, like, you think about that, you can't really. Anyone can be like, oh, well, you could lose this, you can lose this. I'm like, I like everything works in such good complement of each other. From like, you know, like you said, like it's a sci-fi movie. It's an action movie. It's a thriller. It's like a family drama. It's this tragedy about fathers and sons. But like, does not this whole thing just feel like epically? And I don't know which. So I'm probably someone who's more like educated in the actual literature of those would be like, no, it's not this, or it's one more or the other. But this feels very like, for lack of a better way of putting it to me, like very Shakespearean or like a Greek tragedy in a way. Like it feels, it is not your run of the mill action movie.
No, I definitely see that. And yeah, and it's that mixture of genres that we see in this movie, and it's just extraordinary. It's extraordinary that works, and like you said, it's extraordinary that Wu was able to get to do essentially what he wanted in this movie, and he was able to add these little crazy moments of horror, these sweet moments of sentiment, and it's like, oh, in the middle of this big action sequence, I'm going to have a kid's point of view set to Over the Rainbow, and it's like, I'm going to do that. It's like, okay, that's fine. Oh, and I want to have a big motorboat chase at the end of the movie.
Yeah. And, oh my God, are we gonna get there?
Yeah.
But, no, but you're right. It works so well. But then like, okay, so trying to spin back around when I was like, and I'm sorry for being like, hang on, pause. I want to talk about something real quick. But like when we got to, okay, so you were up to him going to see Eve at the house because these two scenes that follow with her are like I said, these are moments that I cite when everyone's like, Nicolas Cage is a bad actor, and I'm like, watch these moments. And you know, it's so easy to see him like ham it up, and he's doing both in the same movie. Yes, he goes full crazy batshit Cage like we want to see. You know, he's like half a step shy from not the bees at this point in this movie. but also, God damn, does he act his ass off in those scenes? Like when he like, okay, so yeah, I'll let you talk for a minute because I've been just rambling here. But like, so he comes home to meet Eve. And just that moment, like where he leans against the door and he's like, home. Like, please tell me you felt that as much as I did.
Oh yeah. I mean, that entire sequence. It's like you feel his desperation. You also feel her anxiety because even though she, I mean, I don't know if she's ever seen. You know, I'm sure she's probably seen a picture of Castor Troy, but it's like she just has this idea. She knows who it is. And you feel the anxiety, you feel his desperation in trying to get her to believe what he's saying. And, you know, there's just a really this is where Cage really has some of his strongest acting in this entire movie. And
like he knew what to dial that into.
The hospital. The next scene in the hospital. When that one, when Eve is testing the blood and realizing, oh crap,
well, you've got even before that though, just like the way that whenever like he rushes up to hug her to hush her, and he's like, and she's like, you killed our son. The way he says, I did not kill our son, like correcting her,
I did not kill Sean.
Does he? Okay,
his son's name.
Oh, okay, I must be remembering that wrong. But like, you know, like the way that he goes, like he corrects her there.
No, wait a minute. You are right. It is. I did not kill our son. You're right because his son's name.
I was gonna say I thought that's what it was, but like I was like I'll defer to you. No, but like she's like you killed Sean. You killed our boy. He's like I did not kill our son. And he's like it's me, Sean. And he goes well just he's like just don't look at my face. And he goes and the voice don't listen. And there's that little moment where he realized, like you can see Cage is like where he like lets you see he realizes how ridiculous what he's asking her to do is, and it's like how do I win this? How do I convince her? And then there's so many subtle, complexly layered like acting moments in there for him, like where he and then just like their little back and forth on the table. He's like, I'm tired, Eve, and then just explains to her the story. And as he's telling it, he's like, so there's this underground surgery, and so he switched my face, which is fucking insane. And it's like, yep. He's like, it's this movie's so self-aware and self-reflexive. I love it. But like he's explaining this to her, and then takes the picture of Sean, which we'll talk about that in the shootout scene, because that breaks. Sorry, Michael, because that
Yeah.
that breaks my heart. But like so he has this whole conversation with her and ultimately convinces her, take a blood sample from your husband because what does he say? Like he goes your husband Sean's blood type is O positive, and then Castor's is AB.
Like AB.
Which okay, like correct me on the science here, but if I remember correct, isn't like O positive and AB like the opposite for the universal donor and the universal receiver? Am I right or wrong on that?
I honestly don't know.
I for some reason I thought that, and I remember thinking that was hang on. Blood. Hello Google. Blood type O. Yeah, O is used for when the blood type is unknown, and AB blood type. Because I remember I thought that was kind of clever. Yeah, AB can donate to other ABs, but can receive from all others. So like, I forget the exact, but I feel like they're sort of like, even with little details like that, they're trying to be like they are polar opposites, or like. But okay, so anyway, so she takes the blood sample. I shouldn't talk about science. I'm not a scientist, but she takes the blood sample, and then yes, we're at this hospital scene that shit, it just carries so much weight to me, like
it really does. And
that surf and turf speech just breaks me every time.
Well, and there's another really funny line delivery of Eve's here, where it's like she's pointing the gun at Sean, and he's like, Eve, where'd you get that gun? And she's like, I took it off my dead husband, or something like that.
Yeah, my faker dead husband. Yeah, and then okay. Oh, and one huge storytelling element that happens right there, which is very important and pivotal that we haven't talked about, is I'm moving very slowly, and then he does the face-off face touch, which has happened. Like like you saw at the very beginning in the opening where he did it to Michael, and then like he does that to Jamie. He's done it to Eve several times, and
that's his sort of symbol of endearment, where the tying of the shoes is Castor's, and
which let's be honest, that face touch, like if you take that out of context, it's kind of weird. Who does that?
Yeah,
but in this movie, it's like my stance is it's actually kind of tender and beautiful. You're like, if I saw someone do that in real life, like, what the fuck are you doing touching someone's face like that? I don't care if you love them, but it's beautiful here.
Well, and so much about think about the title, Face Off. What is this about? Mm-hmm. This movie is all about faces, and that's, and so
and identity and gestures.
You're absolutely right. Like, you take that out of context, and it's like, wow, that's really kind of creepy. But then you put in context, and it's like, oh, okay, that, I mean, it, you understand because of the fact that it's sweet, and the moments he does it, when he does it to Sasha's son and has the flashback of Michael, and then
we glazed over that shit breaks me, man. Like when he does that, and then he sees his son and everything, and that's right before. We get that right before that gunfight starts. So it's like you're like having to wipe away a tear so you can like see everything that's happening. You're like, God damn it! But no, it's. But okay, so like then you have you've got Cage as Archer and Eve, and like she realizes it's him, and you see that in full force, just with a look, with Joan Allen's amazing performance in that scene, and then. He's like, I remember I once took a date out for surf and turf. And he tells this whole like story about their first date, that actually, no, her reaction, I think, comes after that speech, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Just where the full weight of all that kicks in. And again, I can't say it enough. Cage acting his ass off in that scene. Just like at the end when he's like, even though it must have hurt like hell, she kissed me. And just like where he's going back because all he has are happy memories from the past.
In that moment, he says, even though it must have hurt like hell, you kissed me.
Because
You're right. Of the fact that he's going to drop the pretense, and it's like, you kissed me. It's like, this was our
it becomes
so
extremely personal. You're right. Yeah, I messed that up. But like, it's so, oh man, it carries so much weight. And then like, and then she lets him know, like, we've been living as husband and wife for a while. And it's like, he already knows this because Castor's been rubbing it in his face, and he's like, I enjoy boning your wife, and it's just like, oh man, it's so. He's like, I can never make it up to you, and then she's like, you're damn well gonna try. Joan Allen's character in this and her performance is like really kind of beautiful, because like back in the 90s, like from I if I remember, I'm trying to think of other, and I'm not talking like an Alien or something where like the strong like action heroine, but like you have like mostly like the significant others or the spouses, like the women were kind of like there wasn't a lot of meat to the supporting roles for women in 90s action movies. And in this, like,
it was basically a character to essentially bring, get the character home to, essentially.
Exactly. And while this is like the dueling forces of like these two rival men, like honestly, Joan Allen is the heart of the damn movie.
Yeah.
Like her like she is a strong, capable, like dynamic character, and I think I just like, and just that little bit when she's like, he says I can't make it, she's like, you're damn well gonna try, and you see her take charge and like the pivotal role she plays in the finale and everything, like it's she's a damn powerhouse in this movie.
This was sort of one of the start of a big run of movies for her, because she had this in The Ice Storm the same year, and the next year she had Pleasantville, which God,
speaking about another movie that I could talk about forever.
Yeah. And then she was what was the Contender?
The Contender. Yeah. I remember that one being a holy shit moment for her.
And then she ended up being in the Bourne franchise as well.
Well, you skipped over the fact that she was in The Notebook, directed by Dietrich, but yes. Anyway.
Oh yeah.
Why do I know that? Should I know that? It's fine. I like Ryan Gosling and Rachel McAdams, whatever.
So
it's got Ryan Adams. It's his birthday. Ryan Adams. Wow. It's Ryan Gosling today. It's his birthday. Happy birthday. It's got him and Rachel McAdams. I like watching pretty people be pretty. It's fine.
Yeah.
So but yeah. So she did. I thought it was funny. I was like, oh, now she's in a movie directed by Dietrich. But
you are right. Like this is one of those. She's one of those characters where it's like she's not one of those characters where it's like she's just a goal for the main character to get back to. Like she's an active participant in the action. And I mean, you kind of, and the second that Castor re-enters in Travolta's body, it's like you kind of get the feeling that that's probably going to be the case, because obviously Sean's going to have a confrontation with her as in Castor's body. And or in Castor's face. But no, you're absolutely right about her character. It's like she really is the heart of the movie. And it's this movie, I mean, I will admit, like I saw this movie a ton when it came out. This was when I was in college. I was just absolutely, I went to movies considerably more on a repeat basis than I have the past few years. I just don't really have the time anymore. But
sure.
No, I mean, I was, this was when I was in college. I went to go see as much as I could. I loved it that much. And you have the and I love the I love the music, the way that John Powell brings the emotional music back, and I love the way he scores the scenes, essentially setting up the climax of the movie in the church,
right?
Which is basically Sean's boss's funeral, and just so this church takes place on a beach, and this church is on a beach, which okay, great. It's great because of the fact that John Woo's still able to have like his doves and stuff like that come up, and it's just a fantastic looking scene, but it also plays into where the action is going to go afterwards. I think
sorry, go ahead.
I think the scene that I think probably the scene between Sean as Castor in and Sasha before that, where it's like he sees, what he says, whatever happens, you'll never have to worry about Sean Archer again.
Yeah, which is such a beautiful moment and promise. Or it's like, because he means it, because it's him, and like okay, from the way the score kicks in, like you said, that first rising shot of Cage on the beach, like with the sunglasses, and I love that Wu's like, doves are going to be here in a minute, but we're going to do the same thing with seagulls right here, like which was like a crazy transition to me, because you're like, I'm like I was like, your doves are going to come up in a minute. Like, but like the way that he promises to Sasha is such a tender, beautiful character moment. And like, God, I mean, going back to Powell's score, that just those first notes before they even get to the church, the way that builds and rises, is like, oh shit, what's coming next? After everything we've been through, like I remember feeling tense and nervous in the theater, because you're like, this is like, I feel like that's probably the beginning of Act 3, if I'm not mistaken. Like that feels like a big transitional moment. And it always feels like, I remember back in the day, like this is how ingrained it is in my brain from like when I used to see things in the theater. Like I remember that being like the real change moment. Like back whenever everything was like projected on 35 and you had the cigarette burns on the top to let you know when it switched reels. That was like the start of whatever reel that was, if I remember right. And I just remember feeling like, even on video when that's gone, like that is like the big, okay, strap in. This is the start of the end. It felt, it just like that shot, that score, that moment is just like, it's like the quintessential moment in an action movie of feeling like the beginning of the end, but you are not prepared for what's ahead. And then like, okay, so he has that moment with her, and then we go in with Sasha, and then we go into the church. And it's so funny because Emily's reaction whenever we were watching, she's like, who would allow like doves in the church? I'm like, I was like, and I meant this in the comment. I was like, you shut up. It's John Woo. But it's like, it's fine. It's like on a beach and everything's open. And like, you have, and it feels like the way that he kind of like, I know it's in the script, but it feels like it's kind of this interesting way of like working in like sacrifice and religion, by like Cage being a priest in the Handel's Messiah sequence at the end, directly connecting to this at the end with like, the altar boy bringing Archer, Castor pretending to be Archer, the picture of Michael, of his son, and then like, looking around, you see the dove. He looks back to see if his nemesis is there, and you just see that one lone dove flying in slow motion, like in front of the cross, if I remember the shot right. Like it's so like, and everything, like you got candles everywhere, and it's like this, and everybody like calmly goes out, and then Travolta as Cage comes walking in, that scum da 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 doo doo, or like making fun of like like Catholic streams, like, isn't this religious, and does like the Christ pose, and literally like basically it's like he's reading the stage directions at that moment there, because he's like the eternal battle between good and evil, saint and sinner, and you're still not having any fun, and then it fucking starts. And like I'm inside just clapping, because like everything at this point, Wu has like there hasn't been a missed opportunity or a skipped beat or a lull in about 2 hours of runtime at this point in the movie. Almost like there hasn't been a moment to breathe, and this is the moment that the movie kicks in and feels like it's firing on all fucking cylinders. Like where he's like you thought we were done, but there's a reserve tank. Because it's like, how do you, think about it, after everything that we've seen and experienced in this movie, how do you somehow save the biggest and best for last still? It's like incomprehensible. Like I have trouble wrapping my brain around it. It's so amazing.
And you have probably the best Mexican standoff outside of Reservoir Dogs
ever. And outside of Reservoir Dogs, I mean, like this beats.
You have Travolta, you have Cage, you have,
and then
one of
we bring in
you have and then
we bring in Eve.
One of Castor's lackeys brings in Eve, and then Sasha comes in, and you brought up the fact that it's like no father could forget, and then Castor's like no brother could either.
No brother could either.
And then Sasha says neither could his sister.
Yeah. Oh, okay. yeah, the writing on that scene and the way that moment is like, and you hear her voice and then her gun comes in and you're like, how many lines? And you know, like you're trying to catch up with you're trying to catch up to the holy shit levels of cool that is. And then you get like, wee, what a predicament. Again, talking about this being like one of the most quotable action movies ever. And then the dude that brought Jamie there comes and he's like, why don't you put your guns down? So you've got this like 1, 2, 3. And like, I love that Sasha tosses Nicolas Cage. Okay, hang on. It's Archer as Caster. Tosses him a second gun. So now we're like, okay, cool. Wu's like, hang on, I got to get everybody to dual gun status. Achieved. It's like, so, and then it just that standoff with even the mo. And then I remember, I really paid attention. Again, seeing this movie more times than I could count, but like I really paid attention on this viewing to the shot selection, the editing, and the pacing and the structure of the shootout that follows. And you never get a medium shot, you never get a wide shot, like hardly at all. Like it's close-ups of eyes, close-ups of gun, bullet flying at camera, someone falling back, close-up of wood splintering, close-up of dove flying. It's like it's comprised of these like claustrophobic close-ups that you never really get to see the action at all. It's like single shots of everything. And then
I completely forgot
then you get
the Mexican standoff at the end of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which I just started thinking about too, with all the close-ups of the faces.
Yeah, there's that, and like for some reason I'm trying to remember, but like I feel like I remember in like El Mariachi and Desperado there being some fairly decent ones, but like
I'm
not.
Sure there were, yeah.
But like yeah, like I mean, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is like, you know, that's like the quintessential classic. Like, and dear God, don't go down the Sergio Leone rabbit hole because that's a whole separate conversation. But yes, but this one is so. Like I don't like I prove me wrong, buddy. But someday if you make another movie that's like this epic, but like I don't think Wu can ever outdo that standoff.
No,
it's so expertly done, and
the fact that it's funny because of the fact that I mean he never really did, other than Mission Impossible 2, he never really did this type of action movie again. I know. I remember a quote of his after 9/11 where he's like, "I'm not sure if I could really do that type of action again." And he really hasn't, because I mean, after that, Wind Talkers finally came out, which is World War II movie, and then Paycheck, which is more of a sci-fi thriller in sort of the Hitchcock vein, and then he didn't really make anything else until Red Cliff, which is a historical epic. And so he'd really never touched this genre again, and it's almost like everything he had to say about the genre and everything he felt like he could put in the genre, he kind of did in this case.
Oh yeah, I kind of feel like he left it all on the table here.
Yeah.
Because it's like I don't know where there's to go from there as far as like that type of thing. Like because like that stand up, and again. I remember being like, I was so surprised to really like focus this time, because it's like before you're just like into it and you just sort of accept like, oh, this is how it played out. And then at the end you see the aftermath of who shot. But like the way that sequence is done so expertly, but so minimalist, because it's all like individual isolated shots. There's no like, okay, we got a 2-shot of like one person like throwing a punch and then we cut to a reverse shot of that. It's like this creative artistic montage of just very select beats and moments. And they all shot each other. Like you don't get like the shootout in the wide shot, like other, like, like Reservoir Dogs or anything. Like, you end up with just this very focused, it's really kind of disorienting, which and like really puts you in the perspective of if you were those characters in that moment. You're like bullets flying, wood splintering, dove flying, someone falling, scream, someone spins, Eve hits, them with the chair. And it's like, It's just chaos. Like you don't need to see her ducking and going and picking up the chair. You just get like those little select bits, and it's like brilliant direction, really brilliant editing, and and then what we're left with is the aftermath, because it really wasn't about the gunfight. It was about the buildup and the setup of and the building of tension, and then the fallout, which is the aftermath. The montage in between, we don't need to see that gunfight. Because we have the spectacle laying ahead, because like it kind of like I didn't remember that, but you really don't see the gunfight. You just see the glimpses. And it's I think that's a great, and that's a creative choice. That wasn't budgetary. That wasn't, editing for runtime or anything. That was like, it's like he's giving each fight its own unique flavor, because that feels vastly different from the hangar shootout at the beginning. It feels vastly different from the shootout at Dietrich's. That feels vastly different from, the escape from prison, and it feels worlds different from what's about to happen.
Yeah.
So it's like John Woo is like, I'm going to do every different type of gunfight and action sequence that I want, and they're all going to have a unique flavor. It's like, you got chocolate before, you're getting strawberry this time.
And it essentially brings us back to it essentially sets up the chess pieces for the most emotional part of it, because of the fact that the aftermath of this is Sasha's dead, the henchmen are dead, so it brings and Gina Gershon's delivery of what she says to Castor / Sean when she's dying, it just breaks your heart. And
yeah, when she's like, don't let him grow up to be like us, okay? It's like a movie about fathers and sons, but like but between her and Eve, they usher in where it's like, no, it's about families and sons, because it's like you really think like this starts off as it's just about fathers and sons, and then by the end it's like, man, the mothers carry so much weight in this, and it's I don't know, it's a complicated, violent story about family, but
it really is. And then Jamie comes in because she's been brought there, and you basically have the final fight, and then Sean and then Castor reveals himself to Jamie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We got to talk about this little moment or whatever, because you think about Jamie, like she's kind of. Here's the thing, like we love her as a character, but she's kind of been an annoying brat most of the movie, which is her character, like that she's supposed to be that. But then in this moment, like again, like right before she comes up, Cage, who's like Archer looking like Castor, like his voice modulator gets damaged, and all of a sudden, so now for the rest of the movie, we have Travolta's voice coming out of both actors.
Yes.
And he's about to shoot him. He's like, please God, die, which is the most impassioned plea. And I don't remember a time before this movie that I was rooting for someone to get killed so much as that. When he's like, please God, die. I'm like, yes, please kill him. I want to see him win. I want to see him die. And then she comes up with a gun, and then he's like, hear my voice. I'm your father. He's like, he killed your brother, Jamie. And then she shoots him. And then all of a sudden it twists, and you could just see the look on Dominique Swain's face. It's a really good performance there, where she's like, wait, what? Why is my dad holding a gun to my face? And then the creepy licking her face, and then it coming full circle, where I love that. I love that she gets that moment.
The advice that he gave her about the knife.
Because like earlier with the whole Danny Masterson scene, wherever she's like, geez, Dad, some guy tried to rape me and you give me shit, and he's like, hey, do you have protection? And he pulls up that squiggly knife, jam this in his leg, and twist it. Cause like right after that line, what was that line there? He's like, dressed like Halloween and ghouls will try to get in your pants. Again, most quotable action movie ever. But anyway, like, so he teaches her, like, he's like, stick it in the leg, twist it so the wound won't close. And it's like, she does that, and I'm like, that's perfect, because it's like he literally taught that to her. It's like it's basic storytelling, but so masterfully executed that you have that moment. And I love that they give, because honestly, Jamie's character was probably one of the more like side, less dimensional characters. Like you get the idea. It's like, oh, it's the teen angst. My brother's dead. My family's falling apart. Blah blah blah. I'm gonna rebel and be a goth girl. Like like it's I get it, but it's like I love that she got that moment to come full circle there with like where she takes what he learned and stabbed him in the leg, where she realizes. And I love her line at the end where she's like crying to her mom, will somebody please tell me what planet I'm on? That's another line, just like Dietrich's. I laugh at it every fucking time. But yeah, okay, so we have this like standoff there, and then
the
foot chase ensues to
dueling motorboats. And
because it's like and which, can you think of another movie that did that then? Every action movie at that point, what did it end in? A damn car chase. And it was like,
the thing is, it's funny because that was a wild summer for action, because of the fact that in the same month of June, you start off with Con Air, which had airplanes. You had Speed 2.
Did Con Air come out first? I always forget which came first that summer.
Con Air came out first. I remember this vividly.
Okay.
Con Air came out first, which had airplanes. You had Speed 2 Cruise Control in the middle, which was...
I forgot that was that summer. Okay.
And then you had Face Off, which had both of these elements.
Yep.
And it's one of the things where it's like, and the motorboat... I'm going to speak sacrilege because it's like the motorboat scene is a bit too much. I love it. It's so well put together, and I get a charge every time I watch the movie. Watch that sequence. It's so well put together, and it's like I remember watching the behind the scenes thing that they had on HBO for Face Off, and they were talking about, you know, how they did the jump scene with the police boat, with the Coast Guard.
Oh, yeah, where it literally ramps through the boat.
It is literally a ramp that they built inside that boat, and that's basically how that shot was done. And this was I do remember that this was a sequence that John Woo wanted to do for Hard Target, but they wouldn't let him do it for Hard Target. And so
they finally got it.
He got it for Face Off, and it's like it's such a bonkers sequence, but it's so well put together. The editing, the music, it's as over the top, wonderfully over the top as a wonderfully over the top action sequence could be.
Oh yeah.
And like it really showed it's an example of like this, like you said, this is essentially a car chase. I think you said that at the beginning of this. This is
it's like it is a car chase, because like every other action movie back then, like around that time, like the big, if you had a climax, it was mostly outside of like a Speed 2 Cruise Control, yes, but like or Con Air, most often or not, you're like, when's the big car chase? You know, especially if it was a Michael Bay movie, you're like, there's going to be the car chase.
But even Con Air, you had the car chase on the Strip.
Yeah, exactly. So
you had the fire. You had the.
Yeah, but you're right. Yeah, they were trying to bring it down. And, okay, yeah, because that's you're right. I always forget about that because that came earlier. Because like what I remember at Con Air, I'm remembering them trying to land on the Vegas Strip and that whole like finale, which was preposterous and awesome. But but in this, like the boat chase, I completely understand your comment. Because the comment I was going to make was, you don't really need the boat chase in this movie.
No.
But also I'm like, but you absolutely need the boat chase in this movie, because at this point I'm like, how do you top this anymore? This is the equivalent of them making Friday the 13th movies, and they're like, there's really nothing else we can do. And someone's like, you want to send them to fucking space? And they're like, okay. So like, but this is that. We're like, how do we top this? And Woo's like, so I was going to do this boat chase for Hard Target. Okay, let's do this boat chase. And come on, the stunt work in that, where like the dude, the Cage's stunt work goes off to the side and is holding onto a chain, and you're like, I kind of feel like there's like it's funny because Emily made the comment. I can't take credit for this. She's like, I feel like when they did it, they were like, there's no safe way to do this, so you're just going to have to hold on to this chain on the side of the boat and try to ski with your feet. And it's like, they did that, and then, you know, we wreck one boat, jump to another boat. Oh, cool. He's going to try to hit him with the damn anchor. And then, okay, the boat's going to crash and we're going to fly onto this debris-laden, little, beach shit cove. And the boat explodes. And then you have this decrescendo of, like, a fist fight with charred debris. Mm-hmm. And it's so... I like that the movie ends there, because if it ended with the climax where, like, you know, the final, like, you know, confrontation ended on the boat. I love that the boat wrecked and then we got like a final hand-to-hand combat, because I love the boat chase. But
because of the fact that you have to make sure that both of them are still alive.
And it's
really
half that.
Or at least not alive. You have to make sure that Sean Archer's face is still usable.
Exactly. And I would
think, and that's what makes that climax, like, that's another one of those horror moments when it's like he's got the shard of glass and he starts just cutting his face. It's like,
oh yeah, and also exactly. And how badass is it? Okay, first off, like, a couple things I want to unpack there. One, I agree with you. I think it's half that. I also think it's half that it has to be personal. Yeah. After this, it comes down to this plight between these two opposing forces, and it has to be like the boat chase is larger than life, and it's like, that is, hey, let's throw in some hyperbole because it's that movie now, fuck it. But then you have like this like really like Mortal Kombat hand to hand, like intimate, violent, one-on-one personal encounter between the two of them. And like it has to be that. And like even just like when he stabs him in the leg, he's like, I've been bad. Yeah. You're right. But then he like, how badass is it that sorry, damn it, it's always Caster Travolta at this point grabs the spear gun like mid shot, and is like, you will always see my face, and then starts to cut his face. And then it is one of my favorite moments, like I think when the good guy finally kills the bad guy, is just when that he kicks it and it goes off, and the way that Cage screams die at him, it is like that line. For some reason, that feels like the most violent moment in the movie, even though it's not really graphic, just because he's screaming at the top of his lungs, die in his face, and it's so impassioned. You could argue that that's Cage going over the top, but to me, that is just every emotion and the length of that journey coming out, and it's just like the biggest fuck you, please die, I can't, this has to be the end. And then even as he's fading out, you've got this cocky son of a bitch over here just singing his "I'm ready for the big ride, baby," like which is like he's an asshole to the end, and it's so fitting and beautiful. And then and then from the endorphin and adrenaline, holy shit, what have I just been through? Rush from that. We get an epilogue that to me is every bit as heart wrenching as the prologue of this movie. Like we've been through the movie. The movie's done at this point, and we shift into epilogue mode. And take it for a minute, because this shit just hits me right. It's like a gut punch in the heart, man.
Mm-hmm. No, it really is. And I remember the first time I watched this movie vividly. I watched it opening night. I went to go see it with my mom, and I was in tears by the end, and I really was in tears by the end, and I just like, I was like, God damn it, John Woo! It's like he made me feel something. Like this was it was such a powerful catharsis, because that last fight between them has to be personal, and no, I don't look at that moment as overacting at all, because you're absolutely right. It's this release of all of these emotions, all of this catharsis for Archer from everything he's been through in the past 2.5 hours of film.
Yeah.
And and is just such a great moment. And the fact that he earns it. He's earned that moment. Mm-hmm. And that epilogue where it's like he finally comes home, and it's like you've got the backlighting, which is pure Spielberg moment.
Yeah,
and
it's like this heavy, like, foggy atmosphere with diffusion and like, bright blown out lights, and it's you know what it feels like? It feels like the dream sequence at the end of the first Nightmare on Elm Street, where you're like, this almost doesn't feel real.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're like, something's off. This isn't right. But okay, what you said about like, like, again, not just rewind too much, but about the like when he screams die and everything like we were talking about. I do remember, and it still impacts me every time, but I remember the first time I saw that in the theater, I was absolutely numb at that point.
Yeah.
Like I was just like, it's like you feel like you just been through some kind of an experience. Like my nerves were fried at that point. And like when he just sort of stumbles back, Archer stumbles back and just plops down, I was like, same. Yeah, I got nothing left. I'm just done. And then okay, so like now we're in this finale, this ending, with that, like the reprise of that theme in a really beautiful but kind of different way from the opening, because the opening felt very kind of like sad and forlorn, and it's like the same theme changes just enough to be hopeful now.
Yeah.
Did you catch that? Like it's so beautiful. Like but then so like, okay, door opens, and we see this shadowy figure walking, and then Archer as Travolta now himself coming back home, which there's a couple things here that like I'm like, I try to just have to ignore the science, because I love that they make comments like, I don't know what I hate worse, your face or your body, is one of the back and forth before, but like Cage and Travolta, Cage was actually in pretty good shape back then. Travolta wasn't not in good shape, but he wasn't like, buff. He was like, yeah, he's like, I got a cheeseburger or two in me. So like, they even comment that in the surgery. They're like, we'll do, we'll change the hair and we'll do liposuction. Yeah. So it's like, okay, so for each of them when they switched, they had to like, add and remove fat. And then the other thing I love with the wedding ring, is someone had to add and remove the hair from John Travolta's knuckles. And for some reason I can't not see that every time. But when he walks up, it's like, how long ago was that surgery? Because he walks up and he's got like the 5 o'clock shadow beard.
Right.
When he's been clean shaven the whole movie, which I actually kind of like as a character moment if I'm gonna be really analytical, because it's almost like he finally can relax and breathe for a minute, which is like when you think relax, it's like you don't have to be clean cut and shave for a minute, but also it's like, he comes home, sees his family. There's this really like Hallmark cheesy with the light and the fog and the diffusion, and they see each other, and he's smiling. And come on, John Travolta was kind of at his prime back then. Like, like he was no Saturday Night Fever, like, but like at that point he was like super charming, So like he does his like $1 million smile, and then his family hugs, and Jamie comes up and she's looking like a normal teenager and less like the goth girl, which is fine. I actually liked her better the other way, but like, you do your thing. You're happy now. She's a happy girl. So like they have that hug, and then like, well, I'm happy for that moment for that character. What comes next is the thing that like, if I've been emotional most of the movie, this is the part that I'm like, oh, okay, fine. I just completely break every time.
Because of course, and in the son's name is Adam. I've been calling him Ben the entire time, but it just occurred to me that the character, Sasha's son's name is Adam, and so
oh my God! I just realized we have an Adam and an Eve in this movie. They're really going for some shit, aren't they? Because we got Pollux and Castor. We have an Adam and Eve, and we also have a Michael. So there's a they're doing some shit anyway.
But of course he's adopted, or he's wanting to adopt Adam, and not only and obviously we know it's as much to for him it's to sort of keep his promise to Sasha. But it's also a way to help him heal from, the loss of Michael. So.
And I have seen, I've heard, like, I don't remember if it was like it wasn't like an honest trailer, but it was something like that, or maybe it was, I don't remember. But I remember over time I've heard a lot of criticisms of when people are like picking apart the logic of the movie. They're like, oh, everything's okay now. We have a replacement son, and I'm like, that's not what it is at all. And there's a bit of a personal note here, but and I don't expect this to resonate with everyone, but like I'm actually adopted, and that ending fucking hits me hard. I don't know if it's just because of that or something, but that idea of just like, like they bring him in, like to their home and everything. And I think that that's kind of beautiful because you have this representation of innocence and this chance for a new beginning. And at no point do I feel like this is hey, this is gonna replace Michael. No, it's just that this is Adam. He needs a home.
Yeah.
I made this promise to Sasha, who, despite being criminal, was a good person and a good mom and a good mother. And she and him deserve fucking better than they got. So I think that that's a beautiful, tender moment. And like, here's the thing. People are like, he just goes, is this okay? Shows it to his family. And then Jamie's like, I'm Jamie, does the face off face touch. Hashtag face off face touch. There you go. And then takes him to his new room. And then, he just looks at Eve like, is this okay? And people are like, he didn't even clear this with his wife. And I'm like, we don't need that conversation. We don't need that.
And Eve's going to say, yes, of course it's fine. And
of course it is. And it's how at the end of this can you not have a moment of happiness and hope? And these characters have all earned it. Adam included. Like they all, they've been through some shit. We have a lot of damage and destruction in the wake of this film and the plot, and we have so much loss and heartache and everything. It's like, and when people do, I'm like, just let them be happy, please. Yeah. It's like, I think it's a beautiful moment. Is it maybe a little rushed?
It really
sure,
is.
It maybe a little rushed, but it's a beautiful moment that you need, I think. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine. This is one of the most formative films to me that I think I'd seen at the point, because of the fact that, I really started to this is one of those movies that will always mean something to me because of the emotions that it elicited, because of the exhilaration that I've felt over the years watching it, and just because it's one of the most gonzo, just go for broke action movies I think that's ever been produced, and the fact that it was
Yeah.
made in the Hollywood system is really an impressive achievement.
It is.
And
It feels special. It feels
yeah,
very special and unique to me.
and yeah, it's just one of those movies that it'll always mean something to me. And I was like, I want to talk about this. It's like I haven't really talked about John Woo, and it's like there'll be another time to delve deeper into John Woo's filmography in general, because
Oh, of
I could
course.
talk for a few hours about his work and how
Yeah.
much I love it
Same.
over the
Same.
years. But yeah, this was I it's like this is one of those movies where every time I watch it, I realize just how important it is to me and just how much it means to me personally. And it's always it's a it's been a pleasure to talk to you about it, because of the fact that, and especially, it's funny because of the fact that I think, of the movies that we've talked to on an individual basis with you, I think this is the first one we both really love Fight Club, but it's like you're somebody who I think you have more of a connection to that movie than I do. It's like it feels like, to a certain extent, this movie, like, we're very much in simpatico with. Like we
Yeah.
have
I
this
feel the same.
urge to we have this passion for it that really, it's weird to be able to say that about a ridiculous action movie, but because of the way that the people made it, it doesn't feel that ridiculous, except
No,
for
you're
like the
you're
story.
You're totally right, because like when you think about it on paper, it's like this sounds preposterous, but it's like reading a recipe for something that tastes really good, but when you read it on paper, you're like, that's not going to work. But then you
Yeah.
bake it and you eat it, and you're like, this is amazing. Like it is the perfect storm, the perfect concoction of elements that just like results in something that I think is a very unique, transcendent little piece of cinema. And like I thank you for what you said, because that really means a lot to me on a personal level. Like it is equally a pleasure to just be able to talk to somebody that gets and gushes or can gush over this movie as
Yeah.
much as I want to. Like I remember when I saw your post, you're like, I think you posted like a clip of the score, and I was like, oh
Yeah.
god, this score. And then you said something like, I would love to talk about this, and I'm like, I don't know if he's serious, but please let's do this. So I'm so happy that. I'm so
Yeah.
happy that you took me up on that and we were able to do that. Like I just realized that we've literally talked for the runtime of this film about this film. We've basically done a commentary that
Yeah.
could be played in real time with the movie, but like, I mean, not scene for scene in order, but like
No. No.
the thing is, I could keep talking about this. I know that we've
Yeah.
probably covered, I feel like at this point, like it's a natural ending point of everything that we wanted to discuss here, but like,
Mhm.
it's like, it is a joy talking with somebody that loves this movie as much as I do, because like, like I've had friends that are like, oh yeah, Face Off is cool. I'm like, no, 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 it's not just cool. Like I love this film. It's like I'm classifying it under like formative, like you said, and important to me, because like
Yeah.
this thing was like an earworm that got deep in my head a long time ago and is just like grown and taken roots. And like how like sometimes you see a movie like when you're younger and maybe later you're like, oh, why was I into that? Like you kind of outgrow it,
Yeah.
like it didn't age
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
This one, not the case. It's
Mhm.
stuck and it stayed. And if anything, my fondness and appreciation for it has only grown over time. Like,
Yeah.
and I have, there's several films like that, but there's several that like, when I was, like I said, like I started off with like, I only liked action movies, and a lot of the ones I liked were shitty, but and then later you're like, oh, that's crap. And there are movies that I hated back then that I've grown to love. And I'm like, God, what was wrong with you? This is great. And then there's movies
Yeah.
that like I loved back then that you're like, oh God, I'm embarrassed to say that I like that. Okay, well, let's just remember the fond memory of when you did, but it doesn't hold up now. Face Off is standing the test of fucking time, and I
Mhm.
don't see that changing, because honestly, like I've only grown to love and appreciate the movie
Yeah.
more as I've grown as a person and a human, and as a filmmaker and storyteller, and just like I continue to just be in awe of how all the players and pieces came together for this story, which and I mean this in the most like affectionate way possible. It's not a dig on the movie. it has no business being that good.
No.
Like, if you read about this movie on paper, you're like, this shouldn't be that affecting or artistic or brilliantly executed. Like, but somehow they took it's like it's a very quintessential example, in my opinion, of art and entertainment working in a perfectly like symbiotic relationship where like it's both. It's thrilling, it's spectacle, it's also got the heart. It's all the violence as a dance, and then all the the human emotions as like just hitting you in all possible emotional resonance. It's a really unique and rare film that I'm happy to talk to someone else that appreciates as much as I do, because like it really I think it's one that it probably will stand. I think it needs to stand the test of time and won't be forgotten. Like, definitely not for me, because it's I think it's a high benchmark for, I mean, all the players involved. Wu, Travolta, Cage, and everyone in front of and behind the camera we talked about. Like, you don't often get that aligning of stars. Metaphorically, not talking about like actors and stars, but like you don't really get the stars to align that much.
No, you're absolutely right, and I mean it's a shame, because I mean this 1997 was a terrific year, and I will just wrap up with this, and it's like 1997 was a terrific year, and there were a lot of great movies that came out that year, and I think this one kind of got forgotten, and I think part of that is because of how absurd it is, how insane the premise is. But I almost think like if it had come out like 10, 15 years later, I think you seriously would have looked at it as a serious Oscar contender. Because
God, absolutely,
all of the different elements, whether it's Wu's direction, whether it's the performances by Travolta and Cage, whether it's Joan Allen's performance. I think this really is an excellent example of blockbuster filmmaking at its finest and at its riskiest.
You 100%. I agree with that. I'll even go like to add on to that, just a tiny little addendum. I think I said at the beginning of this that I consider this one of the best, if not the best, action movie of the 90s. I kind of want to amend that to I'm going to put this up there with like the greatest action films of all time. Like, I'm going to put this alongside like going back, like a Die Hard, going forward, a Mad Max Fury Road. This to me, like when you said like later this could have been an Oscar contender. Like, I think that this is that good, and I don't mean that hyperbolically. To the point that like and I guess this will be like probably a closing thought for me. I remember pre-COVID in the recent years, when they were talking about developing movies, I kept hearing like rumor mill, like they kept trying to do a remake of Face Off, and they were wanting to do, I forget who, a couple different cast members got thrown out. Oh, they want to do this with this person, and like it hadn't come to fruition. I don't know if that's because it just fizzled or because of everything in 2020 got fucked up and shut down. But I think that I normally am not a remake hater. Like, whenever something comes out, I'm like, cool, I'd like to see it with fresh blood, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. And like there are good remakes, there are shit ones too. But like, I'm willing to give something a fair shot. But there's certain ones I'm like, please don't. Like Jaws, I'm like, don't do it. Face Off is in that category for me. Like when I heard, I'm like, no, I don't want to see two other actors. I don't want you to like modernize it or update it, because like, picture that now, an action movie would be, and I'm not against CG. I'm really not. It works well when it's done combined with practical, like Mad Max Fury Road, going back to that for a minute. But think about like the science. Everything was practical in this movie. Like, they'd be CGing the boats in the chase in this one and everything. And like, and I'm not here for it. Just don't touch this one, because it works so perfectly as it is. So.
Well, Jacob, thank you very much for joining me. I'm glad we were able to have this conversation on a movie that we both cherish and
me
love.
Too. Thank you for having me. Yeah, right there with you, man.
I'd like to thank Jacob for joining me tonight on the podcast to talk about Face Off. That's a movie that's very near and dear to my heart, and I'm glad we were able to get together to talk about it. It was a lot of fun. And that's it for this on the Sonic Cinema podcast. Again, check us out on Apple, Google, Spotify, and Podbean, and as well as www.sonic-cinema.com. Thank you very much.